Bit of a first time on the vPub tonight. I hope you're sitting comfortably. I hope you're giving some thought into those tiny, tiny, tiny distilleries. We make so little liquid that it's difficult for it even to register on some of our radars. Let me give you an example. The year 2000, 25 years ago, we had about 90 operating distilleries in Scotland. About 8, 9, or 10 of them were less than 1,000,000 litres. Fast forward 25 years, and we're sitting with about 50 plus distilleries of that scale. But tonight we're going to focus on even smaller than that. We're going to focus on 100,000 litres, that size, and smaller. The current count in 2025 of distilleries of that size sits around 15 distilleries. But here's the thing. If you take all of those 15 distilleries and add their total capacity of what they actually make, you'd come up with a figure that is barely what Kilchoman on Islay makes in a year. Yet, some of these small distilleries have made quite an impact on the whisky enthusiast scene. I'm going to talk to you about those distilleries tonight, and I'm looking forward to it as always. See you all in a second. Hello, whisky folk. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Thursday night. Welcome to another vPub. Hope you're all doing very, very well. Like I say, I hope you're sitting comfortably, and I wonder what you've got in the glass tonight. I wonder how many of you will have something in the glass from maybe one of these really, really tiny. We're often a wee bit hesitant to use the word craft because it suggests that bigger distilleries are not craft. Whisky making in general can be considered a craft, I think. So we have to be careful of the context and the use of that word. Of course we do, but I think we're very much in the craft end of the scale tonight. Really, really tiny distilleries. In fact, I predict that you're going to be quite surprised how tiny we could actually get this evening. Really, really microscopic in terms of scale. So we've got all that to cover tonight. I've got a list of 15 distilleries, but there's no way I can get through 15 distilleries in a single vPub session, not without kind of rushing it a wee bit. And I want to take my time. I've got my empty Glencairns out in front of me, of which I've got 7 empty, plus I've got a wee dram in this glass just now. And that's not going to mean that I'm going to sit and enjoy 7 or 8 drams with you tonight, but it gives me the ability to pour something if I'm curious or if I'm interested. But I'm going to be working through about half a dozen or so distilleries with you tonight. So that kind of covers about half of the kind of top 15 list, if you think, or smallest bottom 15 list, sorry. But it gives us scope to kind of revisit this again in future. Because a lot of these really, really small distilleries don't really have any product out there yet. They're very, very new. So this is something that we can revisit in future years, depending on how we get along tonight, if we enjoy it tonight, of course. As I say before, the rise in single malt, of course, this is the driver of all these small distilleries, is no doubt on the back of the rise in single malt. If you go back to 1999, the year 2000, the majority of whisky is, even today, is still made for blends, of course, but we had a scenario where only about 7 or 8% of the total product was being allocated and put aside for single malt. We see a slight increase today. It's talk of 8, 9, 10, 11% of the production is for single malt these days, because we've seen whisky rise in capacity and production and generally speaking demand over those 25 or so years. But what we've really seen is an explosion of variety, an explosion of new brands, an explosion of new individual single malt experiences. We need to remember that when we talk about that word single, we're not talking about the fact that the malt is single. We're speaking about the fact that it's a single location. It's a geographical descriptor, single malt, single grain even. The single is talking about it being from a single space, a single area. So we've got, as I say, 100,000 litres and smaller. about 15 distilleries, and I'm going to take you through those tonight and let you know exactly what they are and let you know which ones we can actually get a bottle of, which ones we can actually try as I sit here in front of you. And where are we? We're already in April now, aren't we? My goodness. We're in April. April 2025, quite frightening. Anyway, before we get into all of that, I'm going to do what we always do at the start of the vPub. I'm a wee bit hoarse tonight. I hope my voice isn't too bad. I just had a dry throat most of today, a wee bit tickly. Hope I'm not coming down with anything because the holidays are coming up. Yeah, just to let everyone know, there is no vPub next week. It's Easter midterm. It's the school holidays next week, and I'm going to take a wee bit of time off with my son next week. It's overdue, so that'll mean I'm not back here until that would make it the 17th of April. So it gives you a wee break. I haven't planned anything. There's no pop-up vPub or anything planned for next week. I didn't have time. I didn't really have the wherewithal to go and arrange anything for y'all. So next week is a wee break and we'll be back here on the 17th. Anyway, let's get into the lounge and welcome some of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. How are y'all doing? How are y'all? David Barnes, the Sassenach, is in. Good to see you, David. He's celebrating 34 months of barfly support, buddy, with his pink barfly. Thank you so much. Him and alongside Whisky with Molly Ben celebrating 42 months. Barry Hislop celebrating 18 months. Barry, Ben, and Dave are all keeping the vPub absolutely ad-free. I used to share the ad revenue with YouTube. They would run ads alongside my content and they would share some of the revenue that they generated from those ads with me. I didn't like the ads. I didn't like it was cutting into the time. I didn't like that they were there. I couldn't control the content of the ads. So I just wanted to ditch them. I don't really like ads. If I can avoid ads at all costs, I'll avoid them. And instead, we moved over to the model of inviting people to join as Barfly members through YouTube. And that's been super successful. And I now actually generate more for the channel through that model than I ever did through the ad revenue split. I'm very grateful to all of the barflies like Dave, like Barry with Whisky with Molly Ben, and my pal Rick Johnson, the Whisky Zone, celebrating being a barfly for 31 months. Tom Franey celebrating for 20 months. Barry Hislop is saying, evening, Roy, 18 months already. How time flies. How time barflies. I see what you did there, Barry. Nice to have you in, and nice to have you supporting as well. Whisky with Molly saying, good evening, Roy Aquavite. Good evening, right back at you, Ben. I hope you're keeping well, buddy. Rick Johnson is saying good afternoon from San Francisco, Roy, and all the barflies. Nice to have you in, buddy. A full 8 hours behind. Likewise, though, I hope you're the same as everyone else and sitting comfortably, buddy. And Tom Franey is saying, even Aquaviti, good to see you doing well. Good to see you too as well, Tom. I hope you are doing well. It's been a while since I've seen Tom. I think I saw Tom. Oh, no, I saw you at Glasgow last year, didn't I, buddy? Thanks to all of you for your support. Thanks to all the barflies that rock up and support this every week. Love it. Thank you. Max Kreitner is in. Good to see you, buddy. Good evening, my friend. Hugs and greetings from Christina as well. Hugs and greetings right back at you, both of you. I hope to be able to catch up with you soon, guys. Max and Christina in Austria. Jean Kelly is here saying, greetings, Roy. Really interested to learn about some distilleries that I've yet to meet. Might this include a backyard still or two, a wee illicit still? Wouldn't that be a thing, right? I think I would get myself into some trouble if I started to point out I don't have any knowledge of illicit distillation, I should just say quickly. But you might be surprised just how small we actually get tonight, Jean. Really disappointed, buddy, about the recent conversation exchange that we had. I'm going to touch on that a wee bit later, but it's nice to have you in, Jean. It's always brilliant to have you here, buddy. Whiskey Weekend Dram Harrow saying, good evening, Roy. Good evening, right back at you, Harrow. I hope you're keeping well. And Bruno Martins in Portugal saying, good evening, Roy. Glad to be here again tonight. Always brilliant to have you, Bruno. I hope you're keeping well. Ryan Sutherland, right up there. A very, very small distillery. 8 doors right at the very top. But I would say, compared to some of the distilleries that I'm going to be listing tonight, 8 doors is potentially going to be really quite large in scale. I think, Ryan, what are you guys, about 150, 200,000 litres capacity? Still no product out from 8 doors yet, only source product this far. But I'm looking forward to seeing what's coming out of 8 doors in the future. Gary Carew saying, Daftmill Aquavite received, but as yet uncorked tonight. Thoughts? Gary, it's up to you. I don't like to bully anyone into opening any bottles. I do encourage opening of bottles. I think it's the right thing to do. Whiskey in a sealed bottle is always kind of irks me, but there are reasons for it, of course. The brilliant thing about that Daftmill is the amount of people that are uncorking it, Gary. So if you're in the mood, tonight's as good a time as any. I'm going to I'm going to talk about the Daftmill tonight, but I'm also going to schedule at some point throughout the month of April, I'm going to schedule a Sunday night so that I can relax and do a little communal pour with all my patrons who are interested to join for such a thing. And I'll do a wee lock-in on a Sunday night where the focus of it will be sharing that Daftmill together. Been a lot of requests for that, and I'd be very happy to do it. Alistair Gray saying, good evening, Aquavita, and congrats on another excellent Aquavita bottle release, a belter. Glad you're enjoying it, Alistair. We will touch upon it tonight because it is actually fitting and appropriate for the theme. It's not deliberate. I'm certainly not going to dwell on it tonight, but I want to make mention of it. And Graham Young is saying, cheers, Roy. Aquavita would love to get more access to some of these tiny production gems. Alas, Canadian market's not likely. And I think you make a good point. And a lot of the content, Graham, that I share on the vPub is going to focus on expressions and bottles and bottlers and producers that are going to be less easy to get a hold of depending on where you're located. Not a lot of the products make it outside of the domestic market. Not a lot of products make it outside of Europe, and not a lot of them make it further afield. It seems to be that the way things are going in the world right now, that things like that are going to become more challenging rather than easier. But what we do as whiskey enthusiasts and whiskey lovers is we've got our wee mule network, our network of pals and fellow enthusiasts across the world and located in different countries who incidentally travel. And one of the nice things to do is when we are traveling, we keep our eyes open for the things that we don't get in our normal market. And we keep our eyes and ears out for other people who need things brought back as wee souvenirs and gifts. We're very, very good at looking out for each other. And I hope that happens, buddy. I hope that some of these nice ones can make their way into your hands. The amount of traveling that you do, the amount of times that you're in Scotland, you're a better place than most, Graham. Nice to have you, buddy. Rich Hall is here. Good to see you, Richard. He's saying, look forward to this one. Currently sipping on Moffat Moonshine. Moffat, new make after 6 months in a sherry cask. Now, I wasn't even aware that there was stuff available from Moffat. Somebody offered me an introduction to Moffat earlier this week. Moffat is not going to be talked about tonight. It's not one of the ones I'm going to touch upon tonight. But if there's product available there, then that's something I've missed, Richard. How are you getting on with it after 6 months? How's it going down? Craig Dollar is in saying, hello, folks. Hello, Aquavita. Hope everyone is well. I'm very well, Craig. How are you, big guy? Missing you. Hope to see you soon. I maybe get to see you next weekend, see how you're doing. Billy Bennett 75 is saying, looking forward to that. It's vPubs always have some Daftmill bottles that probably is the smallest Scotch distillery I have from. I think that's very, very likely. Nice to have you in, Billy. Jerry Miller is saying, good evening from Orkney, Roy. I'm not used to these vPubs being at night. Oh, of course, you're travelling if you're up in Orkney as well. Wow, that's pretty fantastic though, isn't it, Jerry? I hope that I can rock you off to a gentle slumber this evening. I hope you're having a fantastic time in Scotland, buddy. 15 drams is a lot, Aquavita. Make them small. It's not going to happen tonight, Jimmy. I'm not going to get through anything close to 15 drams. Like I say, I think about 7 small drams will be my capacity for this Thursday night vPub session, buddy. Good to have Jimmy Legg, and always brilliant to have you here, big guy. Highland Hamish is saying, Aquavita, greetings from Inverness. Sensational sunset tonight, looking north to the Black Isle. I saw a lot of the evening. It's been really bright weather in Scotland this week, so there's been lots of kind of sunset pictures. People enjoying that kind of vitamin D recharge again. Fantastic. Hamish is saying, looking north to the Black Isle. Looking forward to welcoming in some barflies to the Highlands in spring and summer. Brilliant, Hamish. And my pal Mikey Hayes saying, cheers, Roy. Here's a weird donation for you to help recoup the money that you spent on arranging for a fan to ask you for a selfie in the Bonaccord just to impress me. That was brilliant to be able to hang out with you. G and his girlfriend was over from Malaysia. I didn't know anything about it, but me and Mikey arranged a wee quiet dram late on a Sunday evening because it's been a hell of a long time since I've seen Mikey. It was nice to have him back up in Scotland again. But while we were having a dram together, G came over to say hello, which was a wee bonus as well. Brilliant, buddy. Thank you very much for the dram. It was nice to hang out with you on Sunday night, Mikey. Cheers to you, fella. Back down the road again, no doubt. Pete Ed is saying, evening, which it jumped, Frank, just as it jumped. So sorry, buddies. I'm having to scroll a long way back up. I'm missing a lot of the chat tonight. I need to keep up. Sorry, Frank. I will catch some of your chat throughout tonight. Mike Molasses here saying, even Roy, I probably don't have any bottles from the diminutive distilleries you're going to showcase, but I'm enjoying an Edradour in solidarity with the small guys. Isn't it amazing that one of the tiniest distilleries, at one point, legitimately the smallest trading distillery, Edradour, would have been at one point in time, is now quite a large concern, about 3 to 350,000 litres capacity. Might not be running at that, but it's not far away between the peated malt and the unpeated, the original Edradour malt. It's no longer that there are dozens of distilleries smaller than Edradour today. It's quite amazing. Rob Smith is saying, hello, whiskey folks. Hope you all have something good in your glass. I do. I'm going to touch upon it tonight, Rob. Falscraft is saying, could it be a right word to say that we celebrate handcraft? The bigger, the more machine assisted. Yeah, I mean, we have to be careful about broad brushing, but I would say you're absolutely spot on. When you see people manually raking their mash tun, when you see people manually doing their cuts and manually charging the stills and all of these things, you just get a sense that human hands are really impacting the whole production. And inevitably, that probably means that it's impacting flavour and things like that too. But I don't think I'm going to focus too much on that, how much of it is. But I think you make a good point, Harrow. Klaus. I think that the smaller that you get, the more hands-on it's likely to be. Grain of Malt, good to see you, James, in Sweden, saying good evening, Aquavite. And Jimmy Legg saying, boy, Roy, always deny knowledge of illicit distilling, wink, wink. That's right. And Ryan is saying 35 to 40,000 litres at the moment. We're definitely a micro. Okay. So this is another caveat, and it's good that Ryan's pointing this out, because when I go through, for instance, when we get to talking about things like Daftmill, this will become very apparent, but when we talk about the size of a distillery, we're speaking about if they were running full shifts, full tilt all the time. We're talking about the theoretical capacity of a distillery. So a lot of time what will happen if distilleries aren't running at the weekend, they're just fermenting over the weekend or something like that, they're not going to be running at full capacity. So 100,000 litre distillery is potentially going to be running at anything from, 25,000, 50,000 litres, and sometimes even less than that. But what I'm talking about is not having hands-on knowledge of how much is being produced at any distillery at any given point in time. We talk about theoretical capacity, what the distillery is capable of making. For instance, we talk about Springbank having 750,000 litre capacity. The Springbank go to great lengths to talk about the fact that they've never ever made that much product, and they're probably somewhere around a third or between a third and a half of that, even in their best years. So it's very, very different. What they're actually making and what they can make are two different things. Jonas Lind is in here. Good to see you, Jonas. He's saying good evening, Roy. I'm just in to say hi. We'll have to catch this in replay as usual. Guys are coming over Saturday, and I look forward to share the Daftmill. Brilliant. Have a good one. Jonas, I hope that it goes down very well. I'm confident that it will. I've been very, very confident about this Daftmill. The feedback about it has been really good too. We'll speak about it a wee bit later. And now that you're back in watching us on the replay, Jonas, welcome back, buddy. I hope you're enjoying it. Cheers. Gino is saying, evening, Roy. I hope all's good with you, buddy. It's brilliant to have you in, Gino. Fantastic to have you all the way from Canada. And Road to Dram is in Italy. And he's saying, any English distilleries tonight? Circumstance, maybe. No, and it's probably one of the things that I need to apologise about, Alberto, is that I think it would be very, very easy to talk about small distilleries in England because the majority of them are very small. But tonight, I'm focusing on the rise and the explosion in Scotch malt distilleries. I will have future vPubs where we talk about world whiskies and world whiskey production, English whiskies, Irish whiskies, all of that kind of stuff. But tonight is going to be majority focused, if not fully focused, on the Scotch malt whiskey production scene. Peter Lee is in. He's saying, good evening, everyone. And Aquavite poured up a Keno, gifted from a New Zealand whiskey guy. Doodle the dram, enjoy your ribs. So he's speaking to Arnie, who might be in as well. But somebody's gifted a wee New Zealand malt, a Poceno malt, to Peter Lee. I hope you're enjoying it, buddy. Very small distillery, Poceno as well. Whiskey Liberation Front, Lee J. Roy Aquavite raising a glass to the small distilleries across the West Country. Retribution, Circumstance, and 10 Hides yet to release whiskey. That's a good one as well. So Whiskey Liberation Front, Lee J is down in Wiltshire. So it's good and appropriate for him to be celebrating all the tiny producers across the country closer to him as well. Christophe is saying, hey, Barflies, hey, Aquavite. Good to have you, Christophe. Hope you're well. My pal in France, Martin Logan, is here saying already a bog topic, ironically. a big topic. A big topic. It's a wee typo there. He's saying, ironically, it's a big topic. Only focused on Scotland, for example. The biggest distillery in France is basically the size of Edradour. Not the biggest distillery in France, but I get you, the biggest malt distillery in France. Spot on. Fantastic, buddy. Nice to have you in. All right, let's get on with the first thing. I've got a wee kind of, and I'm not going to give you a slideshow, but I'm going to use these as prompts for me tonight. Let's kind of think of the scale of our 15 smallest distilleries. If we add up all of their capacity, as I said earlier in the stream tonight, if we add up all of what they can theoretically make, this is not actually even what they're making. It's just what they can theoretically make. If we add it all up, we barely get to something the size of Kilchoman on Islay or Burnabenny, a new distillery. That kind of scale, that kind of 340 to 360,000 litres. That's divided over 15 of the smallest distilleries. And that is including 4 distilleries that could theoretically make up to, I think I might have made a mistake there. I think I'm talking about all the distilleries up to 100,000 litres. So that would be 10 or 11 distilleries. It's about the size of Kilchoman. If you add in the ones that are producing or capable of producing 100,000 litres as well, although they are, as we've already explained, they are not producing that scale, we end up with a list of 15. So I wanted to start with those because there's a couple there with products released, and I think they're fairly familiar to the majority of us, and it gives me something to pour in a glass with you tonight and to talk about them, some of them for the first time ever on the vPub. So let's bring up our first slide tonight, and here we have 4 distilleries that are producing 100,000 litres per annum, or sorry, I have to say it again, they're capable of producing 100,000 litres per annum. It's unlikely that any of them are. But we've got a Speyside distillery here, Ballindalach. Already quite a few expressions out there on the market. We've been really enjoying it. I personally have been very much enjoying Ballindalach. Last night I was out with a couple of pals in the pot still. We were having a very important meeting that I hope to be able to share news of with you in the future. It was a fantastic day, a fantastic meeting that we had yesterday. We ended up in the pot still, and it was my round. And I went up to the bar and I spotted the Ballindalach sherry cask behind the bar at the pot still. I bought all of us a glass of it, and we played a little game of Visit Speyside trying to guess what it was, and nobody could guess what it was, but we all agreed that sherry cask from Ballindalach, the 2015 vintage, was an absolute beaut. It was a fantastic whiskey. Ballindalach is out there. They've got a core range out there as well. 46% are non-age stated. They've also got a lot of vintage, smaller batch and single cask expressions out there too. I recommend that you try and seek out a Ballindalach, especially when you can pick them up behind bars now, and give it a wee try. Some of the expressions are a wee bit expensive. That sherry cask one that I mentioned, I paid £100 for. And I was going to complain about how expensive it was right up until the point that I tasted it, and I immediately bought a second bottle. I took it to Limburg with me last year, and it was well and truly hammered over in Limburg, and it went down very, very well with all the whiskey geeks I was sharing it with during my trip to Germany last year. Loving the stuff so far. Plenty Ballindalach out there. It's been covered on the vPub in the past though, so we'll park Ballindalach for tonight. Another one that we have to park is Cabrach, because they don't actually have any. They've got a distillery now and they're making product. The picture that I have here of Cabrach is probably quite an old picture. It's probably been upgraded quite a bit since then potentially. But if you look at that wooden installation on the outside, that looks to me like an external wooden worm tub. So there's no whiskey available from Cabrach, but already it's quite a decent size in terms of potential of what it can make, up to potentially 100,000 litres. So that leaves us with 2. One of them is fairly familiar to the vPub. It's appeared a couple of times over the years, and that's Nc'nean, 100,000 litre capacity, and Eden Mill. Eden Mill has never appeared on the vPub before. I've never had an Eden Mill malt on the shelf. I've never owned a bottle of Eden Mill. I'm sure I've tried it in the past, but I'm not aware, I'm not conscious, and I don't have a memory of it. So it's going to be an interesting one for us to talk about to kick things off tonight, to talk about Eden Mill a Nc'nean and the scale that they're at. Let's start with Eden Mill for no other reason than the fact that the ABV is a wee bit lighter than the Nc'nean that I'm going to try tonight. What's in the glass is going to appear a wee bit later, and this has already been uncorked on the vPub in the past, but it's been a wee while since I've had it. And I have to say, this is a cracking whiskey. It's a wee bit expensive, I have to be honest, but it's beautiful. And I think I remember declaring this to be potentially the best inaugural when I first tried it. I wonder if you remember what it is. Anyway, I'm reminding myself that it's gorgeous whiskey tonight. It's a lovely one, and it'll appear a wee bit later. But let's get on. Cheers, everyone. And let's start. First time ever this has been on the vPub, as I say. First time it's ever been on the vPub shelves. First time I've ever owned a bottle of it. Put that out of the way. I need to get a hold of this. This is the cardboard box that it comes in, a kind of hexagonal shaped box. This is Eden Mill, and this is, I believe, the closest thing that they have to a core range. This is actually their sherry cask expression, and it's finished in first fill Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez casks. Interestingly, what's very good about this is they specify that it's European oak Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez casks. The jury's out on how much actual influence we can taste through using European oak, but the general consensus is that European oak should often bring, if it's a classic style, you should often bring a bit more spice and toasted notes, whereas American white oak, Quercus alba, as opposed to Quercus robur, Quercus alba is going to bring a sweeter, more vanilla, toffee caramel type notes, that type of thing. Anyway, sometimes you can look for that, and you can just enjoy the fact it's nice when they're transparent and they actually tell you about it. But the rest of the stats on this bottle is really quite good. The presentation here is really good as well. What we've got here, it tells us on the label that it's non-chill filtered, that it's natural colour. They're bottling it at 46% ABV. They don't tell us the age of the product in here. They talk a wee bit about their fat stills on the back. They call them bulbous stills. They talk about the fact that it's the first time that distilling has been back in St Andrews in 150 years. I honestly am at a loss as to why I've never featured Eden Mill on the vPub before. And I suspect that it's because a lot of the previous releases were just too pricey. But that is not the case for this bottle, because when I went searching for the top 15, the bottom 15 in terms of scale size distilleries, like the top 15 smallest, does that work? I discovered that I could pick up a bottle of Eden Mill for less than 60 quid. This is fantastic. This is exactly what we're asking for. This is bang in the sweet spot of where we are prepared to, as enthusiasts, support new distilleries. If they're bringing us out a nice core range product, we know that it's maybe going to be 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 years old. We know it's likely to be in that age range, but we know if they bring it integrity forward, flavor forward, and they give us a non-chill filtered, a naturally coloured product, and they bring it out a decent ABV, as transparent as they can be, please, we are willing to pay that sort of money for it. All it needs after that is for it to be interesting, for it to be good whiskey. Let's see. Just going to pour a wee drop of this in the glass. Usual caveats apply, of course. It's the vPub. It's me uncorking bottles, so it's a neck pour. And, you know, I do really, really strongly believe, whether or not you believe that neck pour is a thing, I think we always need to kind of give whiskey a second, third chance to go back and give the bottle time to kind of relax a little bit with a wee bit of air inside the bottle, for us to get our head round the whiskey a wee bit more, to understand it a wee bit more. And sometimes if we judge in both directions, if we judge a whiskey on the neck pour, we can sometimes get it a wee bit wrong. And I regularly get it a wee bit wrong on the vPub. So with that caveat out of the way, the nose is immediately obvious to me as I poured that into the glass there. I did get a decent blast of a wee bit of cooking spice, certainly, but the blast was mostly red fruit, dried fruit, that type of thing. Quite sweet. Gentle spice, toasted, warm, Kind of noses a wee bit like an STR cask. We know that it's not an STR cask because they've been transparent and they've told us that they're using Pedro Jimenez and Oloroso European oak. But it's got that toasted Madeira cake type nose to it. A little bit of kind of pencil case, a little bit of sandalwood, a little bit of sawdust wood shavings. But a real deep, rich breadiness, cake dough, cookie dough. Yeah. A wee touch of like almost like a, there's no such thing, but like a slightly plasticine and almond marzipan, that type of thing. This is quite a sweet experience. Autumnal, that kind of nose. Coat the glass, get lots of it on the glass so that I can nose as much as I can. Quite balanced, quite well-mannered as well. That sweet, that plasticine thing is an odd. It kind of, there's a wee bit of a kind of primary school type vibe to it. I don't know what it is. Anyway, let's have a wee go. Yeah, it's weird. Cheers, everyone. Wow. Much softer than I expected. 46% ABV. The one I've been sipping, I'll give you a clue on what's in the glass there, is 50%. And it is actually quite noticeable. This is quite a soft arrival. Definitely sweet on the palate. Sugared sweet fruit. Little ice and sugar. More of that, yeah, icing certainly. A wee bit more of that kind of marzipan. You get where I'm going here with the whole vibe of this. Sweet pastry, patisserie, that kind of thing. It's a sweet whiskey. Sweet spice. There may be a theme that builds throughout tonight, but I'm going to mention it at the outset because I think it's quite apparent, and it's quite apparent on the language and the way they talk about this whiskey on the bottle, but especially the carton, the outer carton, the box. It is very much something that has to bring people into whiskey, of course, that are geeks, enthusiasts like me, but generally speaking, maybe people that are a wee bit more casual, maybe people that are interested in trying whiskey that don't really know much about whiskey. It's very much pitched at people who are passing traffic, visitors, tourists, that type of thing. And I detect that quite a few of the whiskies that I'm going to be sharing with you tonight, the scale that they're at is going to be trading heavily on their locale and where they are in the world. Eden Mill being in St Andrews, it's one of the most visited places in Scotland, right out there on the East Coast, the home of golf, of course. It's a fantastic wee town. It's a wonderful place to visit, especially if you get it on a nice day with the vast beaches that they have there. I think that it's the type of thing that they'll be able to offer that type of clientele. And immediately what strikes me by sipping this is that I think they've nailed that. I think they've got quite a soft, balanced sherry cask expression here. This is not super, super rich sherry. It's just nicely balanced and quite easy and a sweet, appealing whiskey. There is a wee bit of that kind of small scale distillery character here. A wee bit of a sense of kind of those flavors that you might get from a not rushed, let's say a slightly extended fermentation time. It's those pastry notes and things like that, the kind of breadiness, the dough, that type of thing I was getting in there. Sweet ripe fruits, that type of thing. It's very in line with that style. But I think, to my palate, coming to you from, Roy Aquaviti, the guy that's had his face in whiskey for 20 years, is this is leaning just a wee bit too sweet for me. There is some spices there. There's some depth and richness. There's definitely balance and softness to offset all of that. But this is an easy drinker. This is an easy drinker that's just a degree or two on the side of sweet for me. If you like sweet whiskies, I think that this would be the type of thing that you're going to enjoy. But even now, I've got quite a kind of almost like an artificial sweetener, a kind of saccharine sense on my palate, a kind of sweet, a sweet aftertaste that's coming across a wee bit like that. All it had to be, though, was good. I think I paid £56 for this. I got a wee bit off, a wee bit of a discount on this one. It was out there, £56 and change, I think I paid for this. So if you think my whiskey of the year is Ardnahoe Infinite Loch, £55, something like that, for 50% ABV natural whiskey, round about the 5-year-old mark. Think of Ardnamurchan's AD, similar specs, 48%, or is it 46.8, I think maybe. Similar specs, similar price. I think that Edenmill has not been part of the dialogue, not been part of the whiskey chatter, potentially because of their positioning. And if they've now got something that's much more scalable, much more of a core range that we can latch on to, and this is it, and actually quite an attractive, unique decanter style bottle as well. It's actually quite a pretty thing. This is very giftable too. Then this is something that we can actually start to talk about a wee bit more. I think on first approach to this one with the sweetness here, I think I would like to try maybe a cask strength version of this. I think it would maybe do a bit better to add a bit more grip and spice and vigor to offset that sweetness a wee bit. The sherry cask style, you could maybe go a wee bit richer on the sherry cask, I don't know, but also bring us a lovely contrast, kind of yin to the yang, and give us a wee bourbon cask expression as well, and see how we go with that. It's going to be interesting to try this as the bottle relaxes a little bit and it's been open for a while. But I think that's a pretty good wee start and a nice surprise. You could argue that this Edenmill could have fitted into one of the ignored series on the vPubs, right? Because I have been absolutely guilty of ignoring Edenmill, despite the fact that the vPub's been going for 8 years now. I've never featured an Edenmill until today. No bad. What's the ABV? Is Mel is asking. It's 46%. Mel, nice to have you in. Might be the first time I've welcomed you. Nielsen Gupta's here. Good to see you, Neil. How are you keeping? I've got a Glentalker's Royal Mill Whiskies bottling with my Aquaviti Daftmill and had the neck pour earlier this evening. Very nice. So what have you got the neck pour of? Is it the Daftmill, Neil? Or is that the Glentalkers that you're into? I guarantee you both of them are going to be really enjoyable, right? Arnie's here, Doodle Drama, saying I'm actually a bit mind-blown that there's malt from Eden Mill out there. I thought they were still building the place. Are they just expanding? You know, I think as long as the channel has been going, I feel like there's been Edenmill around. They had the Flask series they released, and they had a couple of, I remember when I was up there with the family, there was a wee shop, a wee boutique shop in St Andrews that were selling Edenmill malt whiskey. But the prices, I didn't even walk inside the shop to inquire. It was just ridiculously priced. Triple figure stuff for things that were, I think it was just positioned a wee bit clumsily. But if we've got Edenmill that's suddenly affordable, a core range thing that we can connect with, like I say, this version, this expression I'm trying is the sherry cask. That's going to be quite interesting. If you think it's too sweet, I better give it a wide berth, says Jimmy Legg. He doesn't have much of a sweet tooth, especially when it comes to whiskey. If I detect sweetness in it, I think I have to share it with you. It is quite sweet. Jimmy is also saying the bottle looks classy to someone with no class. You're always so self-deprecating. You've got a bit of class, Mr. Legg. Craig Ritchie is here. Good to see you, Craig. Edenmill is located in Guardbridge, not that much closer to St Andrews and Kingsbarns. That's right. They're just outside, kind of pointing across, but they do call themselves the Malt of St Andrews and things like that as well. It makes me suspicious they're trying to trade on the St Andrews name. I think it's more likely a case of they are the original. I mean, So this whiskey I'm sipping is going to be made on the original site, but they've now moved out into the new site, and I think probably 2025 we're in now. I think since 2024 they've been making whiskey at their new site out at Guardbridge. But what I've been sipping with you was made on the original site, which was originally a brewery. Before that, it was the paper mill, and it was on the site of St Andrews University. So I think that, I don't know, it's up to you. You can let me know, Craig, whether you think that that's allowed to be declared St Andrews or not. It's Nielsen Gupta saying, it's the Glentalkers I opened. I'm keeping the Daftmill for Sunday's lock-in if I can make it. It might not be this Sunday because it's the holidays. I'm going to be taking a trip with my son. It definitely won't be this Sunday, but it will be a Sunday in April, Neil, so see if you can keep some for that. Whiskey with Molly Benny saying Edenmill opened a lot of gin being produced. Then they had capital venture investment, which allowed them to expand the distillery. That's right, and that's what they've managed to do with the new site, which they moved up the road a wee bit for. Good stuff. So where do we go from here then? Well, the other one on that slide that I shared with you is obviously Nc'nean. Now, as I have said over the years, I have featured one or two Nc'neans. And I always felt that for me, they were clearly good and easy quaffable drinking whiskies. I was impressed at their core range, how well dialed in they got their core range way back at the start. I was impressed about the recycled glass, the optional tube, the sustainability aspect, the language, they were really trying hard. The fact that they were laying down malt for longer term maturation, that they were going to sell an older age, this concept of not being around for the immediate and short term, but for a longer term kind of look and things. And also a malt that they could sell immediately at a younger age for their own health and sustainability to get some money coming in. And that was that core range product. I was originally, I think they're calling it the Nc'nean Organic Signature core release. 46% ABV. It was regularly, you could pick it up for in the 40s, certainly less than £50. Sometimes it popped up at north of £50. It's just how it was. But the one I've got to share with you tonight is a wee bit more expensive than that. This was £75 this one cost me. And the reason is I'm probably paying a wee bit extra because it comes with a tube. I didn't have the option to not have it, to not have the tube on this one. I bought this at an online retailer. It looks absolutely exactly the same as that signature bottle, that core range bottle. There is nothing to tell me that it's any different, except for, if you look at the collar, the paper collar here around the neck of the bottle, it says cask strength. This is Nc'nean's cask strength edition. Still fully organic. Everything else is the same. This is 59% ABV, this batch. I had a poke around online to see if anybody else had reviewed this. I didn't do an exhaustive search, so if I missed anyone, I apologise. But again, this is one of these ones that was a wee bit of a surprise to me because I hadn't had much connection with this. I'm not aware of trying it anywhere before. So despite the fact £75 seemed a wee bit expensive, right? I think the sweet spot for a cask strength release of a core range product is probably 65. There's lots of other examples out there at that price point at cask strength. Ben Romack, Ardnamurchans, blah, blah, blah. But I thought I'd give it a go. This is, as far as I can tell through researching, just a cask strength version of the signature organic core malt release. So everything in this should be the same. Obviously, it's the core malt range is released by batch by batch by batch. It should be the same, but just with the ABV dialed up a wee bit. So one of my kind of, it wasn't a criticism, it was just an observation, certainly a criticism with a small c, was that the original one was just a wee bit soft. It needed a wee bit more life, vibrance, vigour, that type of thing about it. And I felt that the original 46% could have done with a wee bit more. I wasn't thinking necessarily about ABV or amping up the ABV, But if they've brought out a cask strength version, then that could maybe be doing that very, very thing. Let's get it coating on the glass. That was quite a quiet wee nose I got there. There wasn't too much on there. Sweet again. This is very, very. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm just kind of picking up lots of sweet things tonight. But this nose is sweet, but in a different way from the Edenmill sherry cask I've just been nosing. I think I'll put this down and chat to you guys for a minute. Leave it to open up a wee bit. But this is sweet and a kind of sweet floral spritz vanilla sense of sweetness. This is a creamy fondant sweetness. Almost like a vanilla cream, like a meringue, maybe. Sweet citrus, sweet red apples, sweet orchard fruit. Keep saying the sweet word, don't I? It leads with sweetness. I think a lot of the flavours that I'm expressing to you just now are maybe cask flavours too. Much more ex-bourbon cask, but we know that if this is the same as the signature series, this is going to be a wee bit of sherry, bourbon cask, I think STR as well. Did they use STR? I should maybe read this. But also I remember that they used to use a wee bit of wine cask too. Was it STR and wine? Do your research, Roy. Come on. The spirit is the cask strength expression of our signature recipe, our organic single malt in the most natural form, matured and specially treated red wine and American whiskey barrels. So I think that maybe they've not said STR there, but it fits alongside a small amount of sherry cask to develop our trademark body and sweetness. And this is written by Annabelle. She's saying, I find I can taste spiced rye bread, juicy peaches, and tangy lemons. No rye bread coming through for me at the minute, but definitely the sweet peach notes, sweet fruit, sweet orchard fruit. Maybe I'll get the lemons when I have a wee sip at it. Let's let this relax for a wee second. Jean Kelly saying, my wife purchased for my recent birthday, 25th of March, a bottle of Nc'nean Aeon Organic ex Calvados, a single cask. It was 60.2% and it's wonderful liquid. The Aeon series, for lovers of Nc'nean, because the Aeon series tends to be single cask expressions, ex Calvados in your case, Jean, seems to have switched on a lot of fans. It seems to be getting people excited to have a few Nc'neans on the shelf. I don't have any of them just now. They've kind of passed me by a little bit. But you know, the content that I do here and the way the vPub shelves are stacked a wee bit, I think I tend to focus more on the core range stuff. Yeah. Cohen is saying, someone please buy Roy a Swiss Army knife. What's wrong with my wee cute box cutter? That's okay, is it not? Yeah, a nice flash Swiss Army knife might be a nice thing. Nice to have you in, Cohen. Falscraft Klaus is saying there may be a video, a video from Ben Looning who sells the stuff. Okay, that's whisky.com. So he's maybe done a cask strength Nc'nean. And obviously you're German as well. I wonder if he's done that one in German or English. Greg's Whiskey Guide is saying Serge liked it and gave it 85 out of 100, but preferred other expressions, especially some of the indies, for example, from Berry Brothers and Rudd. Good information, Greg, in Paris. Good to have you in, buddy. Rick Johnson is saying, you're just a sweetie, Roy. Maybe that's what it is, Rick. And Hellswood is saying, sweet and quiet our experience with Nc'nean to date. Sweet and quiet. And I'd have to say that even with this cask strength at 59%, that's my impression tonight, my initial impression. Now, Nc'nean is in a very, very remote part of the world. It takes a long time to get up into their neighbourhood and then a much longer time. I've never travelled to the distillery yet, I should say, but I know it takes a lot of investment to go and visit there. You can visit there. They have a visitor centre. And they no doubt do get a decent amount of tourist traffic and footfall. But I would suggest that it's more remote, that you don't pass through Nc'nean to visit somewhere else. There's not a lot of passing traffic. I think a lot of people that go to Nc'nean do it very, very deliberately. But I sense again that this is a very, very approachable, easy, as widely appealing as possible product. Quite sweet, quite soft, quite gentle. which is perfectly fine. There's a huge place for that style of whiskey. It's not always what whiskey botherers like us are excited about. We're excited about the oddball, the interesting, the compelling. Let's have a wee taste of a Nc'nean cask strength. Cheers, everyone. Benefits hugely by that ABV. Completely different palate, fresh, and the lemons there as well. There's a real freshness. Comes across, lots of grip, really communicative. It's gone from being quite a quiet wee thing to quite an expressive thing. Lots of sweetness there. Lots of stone fruit, lots of syrup, lots of vanilla, almost a creamy, but it's like kind of white pepper thing as well. There's a lot, quite complex. There's lots happening. It's easy just from that one sip. I love it when I get a whiskey that's just, there's so much kind of flashing and flickering. It's almost like happening so fast. It gives you lots and lots of tasting notes. Maybe that's what we would define as being quite complex, which is nice to have. Remember when I talked about the signature series, the original one, I was probably using words that were a lot more simple. I think I have to go further than that now. And this is encouraging because one of the things with the Nc'neans that I've tried in the past, fairly early batches if we're honest. I should have checked the batch of the one I've got over there just now, but I think it's in single digit batch numbers, doesn't matter. There was quite a healthy dose of youthfulness still there in the liquid. I think that the way this, despite this being at 59% ABV, what we're getting now is a bit more confidence and a bit more maturity, a bit more depth to things. I think that the majority of people sitting down sipping this that know their way around a glass of whiskey would be able to pick out that this is still fairly young spirit. But I suspect it would also just as likely to have people suggesting that it's a 10-year-old product as well. This is good. There's a lot of sweetness here. Sweetness is definitely the thing that leads. If you were to reduce it down to, you could only use one word to describe this whiskey, I suspect, the word cloud would be heavily populated with sweet. It is very sweet. The stone fruit is in syrup. The vanilla is like a fondant vanilla. There is a kind of spice there. It's almost like a white pepper thing. But generally it's sweet. But what we've got here is depth and breadth and much more to get our teeth into. Is that just the ABV that's doing this? Or is it maybe the ABV and the fact that I've not visited Nc'nean in 2 or 3 years? There's a Moorishness to this despite the sweetness. I have to say, I wasn't excited by the nose, but it's the neck pour. We always have to caveat that thing. It's just coming straight out of the bottle into the glass. It was a wee bit tight, constrained, a wee bit quiet, but the flavour delivery, the depth and breadth of this thing on the palate is much, much better than I expected. This is a proper craft-made product. This is nice. It's encouraging. I'm going to say that it's a tenner too expensive, but I need to get on to the theme and the topic tonight. When we talk about scale, when we talk about the size of these distilleries, when we talk about sensibilities, methodology, when we talk about ethos and their ethics and all of these things, the fact that they're going to run their stills slow, they're going to run the stills fast and then slow again, very, very manual inputs. They're going to have extra long fermentations. They're going to be very selective over the barleys that they use, and some of them will not use distillers yeast, they'll use brewers yeast and things like that. They will be deliberately doing things that cost more money. So for me to hold up a glass of Nc'nean and much of the other whiskies that I'm going to share with you tonight and judge it based on an on-paper value proposition, I would be dishonest to myself, to you, and to the producer. We can't do that. Just a few weeks ago, we had Phil and Simon Thompson on from Dornoch talking about how they literally make the most inefficient whiskey in Scotland. They're upscaling, of course, to Strathdean Distillery. They're going to have a much bigger project, and there's going to be elements of Dornoch in that, but they're going to find ways in order to scale it up. It won't be the least efficient distillery in Scotland. But that's going to be a common theme. Whether it's Edenmill, whether it's Dornoch, whether it's Nc'nean, even distilleries like Ardnamurchan and bigger concerns, Springbank springs to mind, they are all doing things that cost more money, and it's very deliberate decisions. It's because they want to do things in a very specific way. For Nc'nean, it's all about organic grain, it's all about an organic product, it's all about sustainability, it's always about long-term outlooks and things like that. So for me to suddenly get petty and complain about the fact that we think that they're probably £8 or £10 too expensive for their cask strength release, we need to draw back a little bit on that and judge it based on what they've managed to get in the glass. There are cask strength releases out there that are fantastic that are about £8 or £10 cheaper than the £75 I paid for this Nc'nean. But I have to say, based, and this is me reacting in front of you live, you saw me uncork it tonight, I'm quite charmed by this wee bottle of whiskey. There's a fullness. It does not betray. I don't know what age this will be. I suspect somewhere in the order of 5 to 6 years old. But it doesn't taste like that. There is a wee bit of youth there. But this is much more mature than I expected it to be. It's absolutely more complex than I expected it to be. You can see what I've poured. I've only got a wee drip left of that. I've been enjoying it too. That's always what betrays. If you're sitting with a flight and you always look at which one is been dropped quickest in your flight, you know, which one you've got through. If you look at your shelf, the levels that are dropping the quickest tends to be the stuff that you're reaching for, because it's almost half subconscious. You're enjoying it, so you want to have a wee bit more. That's an encouraging thing. I think that's a good... It's easy for me to be positive about that bottle when I was a wee bit nervous that I might not be able to be, especially when I was nosing it. Just goes to show the neck pour is a thing. Jimmy Legacy and I would be very proud to run the least efficient distillery. Well, I think the boys are. I think pride is probably the wrong word. It's just basically they're being quite candid about it. I don't think at any point they ever set out to do anything in a particularly efficient way, but they must do some things efficiently because, or they must have just a very, very, very big team of people, because the Thompson brothers are doing a hell of a lot of things all at once, right? There's a Dramface article, a feature went out today. It went out late in the day because Dramface got an exclusive on the new product from the Thompson brothers, the mystery malt. You need to read about that. Please head over to Dramface, pick up the details on that. What a fantastic, good, fun, energy injecting little project and exercise that is, mystery malt. But alongside the mystery malt news release, there's also a feature on Dramface talking about the unstoppable Thompson brothers. Talking about all the things that they're doing through a Q&A exercise with Innes Glen. Fantastic questions from Innes, good answers from Phil and Simon. I think it was mostly Simon Thompson that answered it. So go over and have a wee look at that on Dramface. Really interesting to see. Whisky with Molly, you've got me nervous now. Benny's saying Daftmill now in the glass. I want your honest opinion. Please be honest with your fellow barflies as well, Ben. You know, don't say that this is a great glass of Daftmill simply because it's come from, you know, a collaboration with me. You know, you paid a lot of money for that, buddy. I want you to really, really enjoy it. But you need to be honest as well. Matthew Burton, Aquavita, what do you think of the Thompson Brothers' new mystery malt concept featuring Nc'nean and some other small distilleries? Yeah, I think I want to... Matthew, it's nice to have you in. It might be the first time I've welcomed you. I think I'd like to drive traffic to Dramface. I think I'm going to talk a wee bit about Dornoch tonight. So I love it. I love the idea. I've known about it for a wee while, but I had to be uh, quiet because I think it took a long time for them to be able to pull it off and to develop everything and to put all the partnerships in place. There's a lot of trust in that project that they've pulled together. I would love it to be a popular thing. I would love it to be a success. I would love it to be an exciting launch and to sustain that excitement going forward. It's a brilliant concept. I think it's great. It's just very, very typical of what the Thompson brothers do very, very well. And I'd like to see it be a success. Put it this way, as soon as that hits the shelves, I'm going out to buy a bottle, maybe two, just for the sheer fun of it. Go over to Dramface, look at the latest news article, Thompson Brothers Mystery Malt, and also the feature piece. And you should be able to learn a wee bit more about what this thing is. Jimmy Legg is saying, Ben only lies to me. Don't worry about him lying to you. I could stop the Thompson brothers, but I won't. Aquavitae. Says Jimmy Legg. I know you're a bit of a fan as well, surely. I think that they do have a knack of doing good things, to the point that as independent bottlers go, I buy blind. If it's got Thompson Brothers names on it, I don't feel I need to try before I buy, which is why there's so many of them over my shoulder on the shelf here. But that, and also the fact that they are my independent bottler of 2025, whatever that means to you. It's my independent bottler of the year. Okay, let's move on in this wee list. We've got 4 of them up here. We've got the first 4. These are all 100,000 litre capacity. Let's get smaller. And throughout tonight, we'll just continue to get smaller and smaller. We're going to move into a Perthshire distillery now. Southern Highlands. This is Strathdean in 2019. Strathdean had been going for about 5 or 6 years by this point, I think. But in 2019, Douglas Lang stepped in and acquired Strathdean Distillery in Southern Highlands. And they started to put their own mark on things. Now, Strathdean has had a number of releases out there. If you were to, for example, check Whisky Base, you would discover quite a number of Strathdean bottles out there and expressions and releases over the years. Some of these pretty small batch, private cask even, things like that. But it took a while for them to get round to an official inaugural. 60,000 litres per annum, about half the size of those 4 that we saw earlier. So really we're getting into cottage style scale now, but they're making enough to have been able to put out quite a few bottles. However, it's been on the vPub before. I was quite happy to crack open a Strathdean. This is the acorn-shaped bottle that came out in 2023, I believe. Is that right? Or was this? No, I think this was actually 2024. I think this has only been out about a year now. I think this was early 2024. But I've opened this before on the vPub, and you can see I've taken a few drams out of this because I genuinely enjoy this wee, delicately spiced, very fruity bottle of whiskey. This is what Strathdean has called their inaugural. Despite the fact there were other releases beforehand, I can see why they want to refer to this as their inaugural, because these distilleries need to put an anchor in. They need to put some kind of core that everybody can gravitate towards to understand what they're about. So this is used in triple cask. They talk about ex-bourbon, virgin oak, and sherry oak here. We know that the age on this is there's some 5-year-old product in here during Douglas Lang tenure, 4 or 5-year-old, I think, mixed in with older products, 6, 7, 8-year-old from older Strathdean from before the new owners took over. So it's quite a mix here. It's an unstated product, and it's bottled at 50% ABV, and this is what was in the glass as I was setting up tonight. I stand by it. There has been another inaugural that I enjoyed more than the Strathdean, but this is up there. This is a fantastic, well-made, very well balanced, hides its youthful single-digit age statement very, very well. High-quality whiskey, a perfect example, actually, a formidable offering of how these new distilleries don't need 12, 14 years in order to bring this amount of flavour and poise and balance to their whiskies. This being young, this is very, very good whiskey. Very good whiskey. I think I'm going to go back into the It's not a rant. I'm going to go back into the caveats that I talked about on Nc'nean. I think the reason that 10,000 bottles of an inaugural is still not sold out after a year is a wee bit to do with sure visibility and chatter. It hasn't caught the zeitgeist attention, I don't think. It's difficult these days when there's so many whiskies and so much choice out there. But at £85, and it's still at £85 today, this inaugural bottle, I think it was maybe just a wee bit expensive. But we have to talk about scale here. I've just been talking to you about the cost of doing things the way Nc'nean want to do it, and they've put their cask strength out there at 75. We're now at half the size again for this Strathdean. Half the size. And the bottle was squealing. I don't know if you heard that. Maybe the mic didn't pick it up. It's complaining at me, whinging about the price. We're at half the size again. That said, I think the £85, especially in 2024 when the launch came out, was just a little bit tight on price. And I think that if it'd been a few pounds less, £75, even £72, £70 of that order, I think it maybe potentially could have had a lot more exposure and a lot more people buying it and a lot more people talking about it. You know, I don't know who their target audience is. Strathdean, quite a pretty little part of the world, maybe going to do some trade on tourism and things like that. I think that a lot of people have maybe never heard of Strathdean. It's going to be a difficult sell. I think it might have been easier if the price was just a wee bit neater. That said, it's a tiny distillery, a tiny concern, not a lot of stuff out there. And it's beautiful whiskey. It really, really is. If I sip this, could I honestly sip this and say, yeah, there's £85 worth here? It's difficult. In the framing of it being a new distillery, a small distillery, one of Scotland's tiniest distilleries, yeah, I think there is. And there's enough density, and the fruit is intense enough. The fruit is dialed up enough. The spice is dialed up enough. Lovely balance between fruit and spice on this one. Still quite a sweet whiskey again, for it to be a very flavourful thing. I think if you were to suggest that it was an indie that you'd bought, let's leave ABV and price, age statement, everything out of it. And if you were to say, no, I paid £85 for this independent X, whatever it may be, Glentochers, you know, the fruit level in this is up there with the likes of a Glentochers or something. I think most people would have to be a wee bit pragmatic and say fair enough. Be interesting to see what Strathdean do when the inaugural finally disappears and they bring along their core range and they bring along what's ever going to be on the market for us to buy going forward. Whether they're going to switch back to doing small batch, annual batches, whatever it may be. But this is definitely a good whiskey. Really good whiskey, in fact, as I'm sipping it in the third, I opened tonight with it, but it's now after the Nc'nean, it's now after the Strathdean. It's a completely different brand altogether. Eden Mill. I'm tasting just how good it is. And it does have that craft element to it. It does have that kind of lovely kind of ethereal fermentation room, ripe banana bread and fruit, that kind of thing. It's a well-made product. Brian Cabayas is celebrating being a member of the Aquavitae Barflies with his gold barfly for 15 months. He's saying, good day, Barflies. I'm happy to join the live at last. Brian, it's brilliant to have you here, buddy. I hope you're doing very, very well. My bottle starts speaking to me. I stopped drinking Aquavitae. I don't know if anybody would have heard that. It was just like a little air, a pressure thing through the cork. Graham, might just be me, Jimmy. You might be absolutely right. Graham Fraser is saying, did Simon Thompson not say he'd worked on some of the older whiskey in the Strathdean release? Simon Thompson had quite a, I don't know if after Douglas Lane took over, I don't know if he continued the collaborative work with them, but he was doing collaborative projects back in Strathdean in the early days. When he was trying to dial in and play with whiskey production concepts and things like that. He did a lot of work with Strathdean, or Strathdean did a lot of work with him. But you're absolutely right, Graham. I don't know how much he would have had to do with making up this inaugural release, but probably there's ingredients or stock in this inaugural that has Simon Thompson's thumbprints all over it. Fernando is saying a third of the list, and I'm still no bottle to go with tonight's theme. I keep hoping. Don't worry, and don't worry about this, Fernando. You don't always need to sip along, buddy. It's not about that. It's about awareness, and it's just about us having a quiet night, a Thursday night whiskey session. We don't always have to be sipping the same whiskies. And in fact, it's going to get so ridiculous tonight, Fernando, that one of the whiskies I'm going to sip with you tonight is so rare that if you were to go out and try and find it, it would be very, very, I'm sure it's not impossible, but very difficult, to the point that I don't even think anyone's going to predict one of the whiskies I'm going to sip tonight, but I've been surprised in the past. Mark Hackle is here, Master Chief's Sea Chest, thinking of opening my Daftmill for a birthday dram tonight. Mark, I don't have your board up. I don't know where to put such a thing. It's going to have to go in the vPub somewhere. I want to show you this. It's round the back, isn't it? It's maybe not appropriate for a public display. I can't hang it up over my shoulder or anything, Mark. But Mark was out and he saw this, and he thought it was pretty appropriate because obviously my name, this is a Duff Beer placard, an aluminium placard for the wall. But what's really interesting about it is look at what the message up the top here says. 4 out of 5 barflies can't be wrong. Duff Beer as well. Really nice of you to see that and think of me, Mark. And much, much nicer for you to take the time to actually pack it up and ship it across to me, buddy. Thank you, buddy. It's nice to have you in here too. Arnie's Doodle Drama is saying, can you give Alberto a wee shout out, please? He treated me to a wee parcel of rye samples, and it's a new wee world to me tonight. As an East German, my taste buds feel at home, away from home. Oh, wow. So Alberto in Italy has been shipping rye samples to Arnie, the East German living in Glasgow. Fantastic stuff. I love this community. We shout out to the superstar that is Alberto Cinelli. He rode to Dram. You may actually be in tonight. I think you're in, Alberto, right? But very nice and generous of you to look after our pal Arnie as well. Christoph has bought me a wee dram to say, night, fellow barflies. Don't forget to leave a like. See you in the replay, Roy. Cheers. Welcome back on the replay, Christoph, and thank you very much for your dram, buddy. And thank you for reminding everyone to put a wee like up there because it just helps me, helps YouTube, and it helps reassure everyone that joins on the replay afterwards, like all of you, that it is legitimate content for whiskey. Cheers. Let's move on. If we go from Strathdean, we're going to get smaller again. Brand new distillery, nothing to try here tonight. I'm just mentioning it. Down at half the size again from Strathdean, we're down at Orkney Distillery. Obviously, it's obvious where Orkney is in the Orkney Isles, but now we're now down at 30,000 litres per annum being produced at Orkney. Let's get some, hopefully we'll be able to get something from these guys in the future. Not for this session tonight. Smaller again, Daftmill. Now, I know a lot of you are going to see that there and say, Roy, what are you talking about? Daftmill, 25,000 litres per annum. We know that Daftmill is bigger than that. It can produce up to 65,000 litres. But what I want to talk about, and we will pause, we'll take a beat on Daftmill here. We'll stop for this tonight and just need to indulge me for a wee second on Daftmill. The reason that Daftmill is 20 to 25,000 litres per annum is that Francis only works in his downtime on the farm, the summer and winter seasons. That's when he's distilling. So the distillery is pretty much mothballed in between times. It's just sitting there dormant. And he cranks up distilling for the winter season, and he cranks up for the summer season. That's why when you buy a bottle of Daftmill, it'll tell you the vintage and it'll tell you what season it was distilled in. Here is the bottle that has captured the hearts of a lot of barflies over the last week or two. This is my Daftmill. This is, I have to pinch myself, right? This is the Aquavitae Daftmill. 2009 vintage, distilled in 2009, bottled in 2025, of course. This is a winter distillation. This was distilled in December of 2009. Just the fact that I have this with my name on it, that there's 362 bottles of it out there, that people are enjoying it. I suspect there are few single casks, few small batch, few outturns of Daftmill anywhere at any time that is going to have so many people opening it as this release has. It is so heartwarming to see the amount of bottles and pictures on social media, whether you're sharing in the Barflies page on Facebook, whether you're on Instagram, where we're sending me the direct messages of you getting together in your wee groups and opening it and sharing it, and everybody with smiley faces and raised glasses. I love it. It fills me with so much joy, and I suspect it's the type of thing that would fill Francis, who makes this product, full of joy as well. The fact that the bottles are being opened and enjoyed. On the back, I love the fact that we've put the wee barfly on the back for everybody to see that it's a barfly bottling. But of course, we couldn't have a Daftmill out there and not have a mention of wheelie bins for recycled reviews. And of course, famously, Francis's reliance back in the early days on wheelie bins for grain. The release of this went very, very well, I have to say. There have been difficulties. There has been things to go over. There has been hiccups and bumps along the way. But it was such an intense thing to try and manage the release of this without it catching fire, and just, lots and lots of people coming in, not for necessarily nefarious reasons, but I wanted this to go into the hands of the people that don't normally get Daftmill. I wanted it to go in the hands of my community, my patron supporters. I wanted them to be able to get their hands on a very, very mature, very, very good Daftmill. I'm going to pour it. I just have to pour it. I'm not going to give you taste notes tonight. I'll save that for the Patreon lock-in. This is a tiny distillery. 25,000 litres per annum is probably closer to what it's actually making rather than its theoretical capacity of 65,000. I'm just going to pour a tiny wee sip of it, and I will drink it with my patrons on a lock-in on a Sunday night in the near future. But I absolutely adore the liquid. I'm so happy with how it came out. So happy with how it was bottled. So much fruit. So much bright, zesty, effervescent fruit. Sorry, I'm not going to dwell. I'll just have a wee sip. I want to raise a glass to Francis. I want to raise a glass to Adelphi, who bottled it. I want to raise a glass to Berry Brothers, who takes care of the admin and looks after Daftmill as a brand. I want to raise a glass to Royal Mill Whiskies, who generally do a fantastic job of getting deliveries right across the other end of the planet delivered in record time. Everybody locally with free delivery as well. We managed to get it together. There were a couple of people that were disappointed in the end. My pal, Gene Kelly's in here tonight, and he wasn't able to get a hold of a bottle. Listen, there's ways that we have of sharing, and maybe whiskey finds you, Gene. And for everybody else that wanted a wee drama of this, that wanted to try it, that wanted to get involved in it, I'm hopeful that the Mule Network and the sharing and the generosity that we have in our community will look after you all too. But this was a privilege, and thank you so much for your support, genuinely, all of you. Not bad. Here in Oz, several small-scale craft distilleries, says Brian Cabayas, including King Lake Distillery, Wobbs Harbour, which have got a Glenduncan gift up there of Wobbs Harbour, and Blackwood Distillery produce high-quality spirits. Their products are well-crafted and command premium prices. And I think that's going to be one of our takeaways, isn't it? That kind of premium price command thing. Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much for your dram, buddy. Nice to have you, and as always. George P has gifted 5 Aquaviti Barfly memberships out there to community. That's George P. There's a George L. There's a Arizona George, but I suspect that George P is a different George. George, thank you for your generosity, buddy. And my pal Danny Keenan, who I met in the pub last night, he's saying, great seeing you last night, Roy. It was an absolute pleasure, Danny. What a treat to see you there. We were not supposed to be out that late. I was with Guy after being out with David and Keith Duncan. By me just naming those names, you probably know what the meeting was about yesterday, what we were discussing things. But Guy and myself decided that we were enjoying been out and feeling free, and we stayed out a wee bit too long. Thanks very much for coming over and helping us with that horrible challenge of Is It a Speyside, buddy? But Danny, it was brilliant to see you again. Maybe next time I'll be a bit fresher and my palate will be a wee bit sharper. Cheers to you, buddy. Jimmy's bought me a generous dram as well. Aquavite. I may have opened my bottle, but it's my third try of it. Bright and citrus fruit, zesty, fizzy, yet thick palate, buttery, ripe stone fruits, apple turnovers, yummy, slancha, says Whisky with Molly. So there's Jimmy getting annoyed that I've not picked up Ben's reaction to it. I may have just opened my bottle, but it's my third try of it. Fantastic. Ben, it means a lot that you're loving it. Generally speaking, the feedback has been amazing. Willie Buchanan, Jimmy, thank you very much for the generous dram and bringing Ben's comments to my attention. You know how to run things about here, don't you, Jimmy? Cheers, buddy. Willie Buchanan saying, hi, Roy, hope your cold doesn't come too much. I've lost my smell and taste, so not had many drams. All the best from Morag and me. I hope that's not what I'm in for. I don't think it is. I think it's probably just I was shouting and enjoying myself too much yesterday. I stayed out a wee bit too long. I think that's what I'm suffering from rather than from anything that's really kind of infection. I hope that's the case anyway, buddy. Hey, Willie, I hope you get well soon. I hope you get better soon. Nice to see you in here tonight, and all the best to Morag and Colin. Andrew Pierce is saying, just as it jumped, Andy, I'm going to go back and catch that. I'm going to try. Andy, I've missed it. I don't even know where that chat was. I'm terrible. Andy, I'm so sorry. I should be able to just search bring up all the Andy Pierce comments, right? Andy, it's nice to have you in. I'm sorry it jumped just as I was reading your comment there. Sometimes it happens. Papa Q saying, Aquavite, looking forward to an Aquavite Balmenic in the future. Oh, that would be a tough. How would you manage such a thing? I think it would probably have to be an indie. Never say never, big guy, right? Graham Fraser is saying, Stirling Distillery has a capacity of 20,000 litres per annum, but it's so tiny, I guess a much, much smaller output than that. No whiskey available, has only started production a couple of years ago. Might have Stirling mentioned it tonight, Papa Q. I picked that one up, didn't I? Cal Taylor is saying, is your rare port a Jackton? Oh, nothing on Jackton yet. Rick Johnson is saying, still waiting for the delivery here in California, but the drama of it that you shared at the Belfry was the one that made Catherine go, oh my God, that's when I knew I'd be buying it. Yes, it went down very well at the Belfry too. And it's really nice to be able to share it in advance before anybody had bought anything, to share it with everyone. You're kind of worried that, oh, well, I've tried it now, I might not buy it. But people tasted it and thought, okay, I need to have this on the shelf. That's the 15 watt. The 15 watt. I just read Mark Watt there. That's the 15-year-old Daftmill. It's just beautiful liquid, very unique as well. And Mark Watt is talking about the fact that he loves Balmenic. I think we all kind of fall in love. I mean, Balmenic, I always talk about it being an under the radar distillery, right? It's just, even when you go there, you can visit and you can tour, but it's a gin tour that you do. It's almost like they don't talk about the whiskey that they make. It's got a very, very deliberate output as part of Hanky Bannister and other blends and things like that. And I think that it's just, I would just love there to be more of it. It's not a small distillery. There's quite a sizable output in terms of malt from it. I'd love to see more of it from Indies too. We've got a couple of Balmenics on the shelf from Indies here, but it's a lesser seen distillery for sure. Wormtub distillate as well. Lots of people love the fact that it's quite a big, bold whiskey with a lot of body about it too. Right, let's get moving on. After we go from our Daftmill, then I'm glad I was able to kind of talk about Daftmill. Just thanks for indulging me ever so slightly there. Then we move on to Averick. I don't think I need to taste this one tonight because I've got a glass out here for it if I have to. But I've had a couple of Avenjaricks on the shelf over the years, and nothing that I've been really, really quite challenging, quite oddball things. But Sandy McDonald, my pal Sandy, bought me a gift of this. Let's bring this down. I'd like you to see this. This is a cask strength Averick, but specifically this was their cask strength Madeira cask release. And this has got a very special spot on my shelf now. I'm getting through this. It's a small bottle. It's a 35 cl, I think. It's a 35 cl. rather than a 50 cl. This is quite a small bottle of liquid. It's quite high ABV too. Madeira cask, 63% ABV. This is handwritten label that's on this as well. Quite fascinating to see. This is fantastic whiskey. So all the Averick that I've had has been really, really challenging, right? Really out there on the funk side of things, the dirt, the grime, the kind of grungy side of things. Sometimes it can be really quite challenging. And I've never really bonded with Averick. And I remember the reaction when Sandy brought this along to the bottle share in Glasgow a couple of years ago. I remember thinking, oh, Averick. And I think he saw my reaction. It was pretty rude of me to do such a thing, right? But he knew that there was a risk that it wasn't going to be that great. Anyway, it was opened there and a couple of people tried it and a couple of people were actually quite surprised. Like I say, a lot of it made it home with me. I have grown to love this. When we talk about these tiny, tiny, tiny distilleries, a lot of effort goes into doing things the long way, the more laborious way, the more manual way, the more traditional way, the more expensive way. It's just the nature of it. It's what happens. But another thing is happening as well. Because of these tiny distilleries and the way they go about their business, there's an inevitability that it's going to taste like a craft-made product. I'm using that C word. But it's also going to just be its own thing. It's going to be very, very unique. It's going to be characterful. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be different. And that's absolutely true about Averick. I'm not sure if Marco Taborn is still making product there. I don't think he's making it full time. I think it's a very part-time run project. But I would like to think it is because it's been going for about 20 years now. This was one of the original kind of new wave distilleries was Averick. When the news broke about this, I remember being down in Highworth at one of the spirits at Highworth down in Wiltshire, and with Ken and Fran, who used to run that shop down there. They were really excited about this. They were telling me about this. The first time I ever heard of Averick was them telling me about it down in the south of England. And I remember the buzz that it generated, this tiny kind of distillery, this home-baked, passion-driven idea that this guy, Marco Taborn from Lewis, somebody from the Outer Hebrides, was going to take distilling back to the Outer Hebrides. And he did it. The fact that the whiskey was utterly inconsistent, very challenging at times. It could be something like this that's really quite compelling and something that could be quite difficult. I think that it's always struggled to the point that if you go and you look for Averick, sometimes you find it online and other times it's just not there for a long, long time. But I think that the reason that this is a special place in my shelf, I love to hear people say, how would you define grimy and industrial? How would you describe that? What kind of flavor? So rather than reaching for maybe a Benromac, some Springbanks, Longrose and things, various other distillates, Ben Nevis, to reach for something like this is quite powerful. But also when somebody says, I tried Averick and I didn't like it, I reach for this. It's a cracking wee thing. Averick is, like I say, I don't think they're capable of making 20,000 litres per annum. I'm going to suggest to you that they're making a hell of a lot less than that. But we're going to get smaller still. Smaller. Here we go. North Point. I think this has now got the crown as being the most northerly distillery around Sutherland. If you're still in, maybe you're a wee bit further north. I don't know for sure. But North Point Distillery right up at the very, very top of Scotland. A tiny distillery making 18,000 litres per annum. No whiskey being released yet, but it turns out that my pal from the Glasgow Whisky Club, Greg Benson, is their head distiller. So that means I get sent a wee care package about a year and a half ago. Let's get to it. Jimmy Legg is saying, I bet that Madeira cask was surprised to end up at Red River. Yeah, that's true. I don't know how many Madeira casks they ever had. I don't know how many Madeira casks that went into that cask strength where it was a single cask. But yeah, something as remote as that It's incredible. Ryan Sutherland is saying, are they still producing? They lost it. Good to see still in. They lost their Scotch whisky verification a while back, but maybe gained it again. 100 kilograms bigger mash than us. Wow. So that's maybe got a lot to do with it. I know that one of the Dramface team tried to visit recently and found it to be closed, but that might just be a mothball thing. I'm not sure. Actually, correction, 2 times 500 kilo mash tons versus our single 400 kilo mash job, a 400 kilo job. So that's quite a big difference in terms of mash capacity. Falscraft Klaus is saying at that size, a real core range will certainly have to embrace batch variation. Absolutely, Klaus. Absolutely. Sandy McDonald is saying, I wish I kept it now. Sandy, I tell you, I promise you, you need to remind me though. Some of that will flow back to you, buddy. I might even bring you the bottle back and you can have what's left in it, buddy. I'm glad to have it. I really love it, Sandy. Blackfen is saying the Averick Distillery website is still online and selling to the UK. So obviously the stock that they've made and have got in stock is still there. There's a reaction to Mark Watt. I'm not picking up Mark Watt's Ryan Sutherland to see what I guess the people wanting to buy their whiskey. And Ryan is saying still more northerly, but we never talk about it. And A. Martins is saying, is Loch you in the list? Stay tuned, A. Martins. Stay tuned. Okay. So, yeah, Greg Benson is a member of the Glasgow Whisky Club. I've not seen him in quite a few years now. I think the last time I seen him was maybe around about Glasgow or Fife or something like that. But this 18,000 litres per annum tiny distillery right up there at the top of Scotland called North Point, they're making spirits and they're making whiskey now. And they're going to be making it under the brand name Dalclaggy. So what I have here is a new make sample and a cask sample. So this cask sample is 65.4% ABV. The new make you can see is absolutely clear. So I suspect this is going to be 65.6%, just a wee nudge more. The cask sample is just months old. 21st of August it was distilled, 2023, and it was drawn on the 27th of October, 2023. So we're talking about, a 2-month-old cask sample and some new make spirit. I have opened these, and I do have a recollection, a vague memory of how they tasted. I'm going to get a clean glass though, and I'm going to try the cask sample tonight, just to basically talk about the fact that these places are earnestly trying to make the very, very best whiskey they can. Now, we've got some themes here. We've got unique approaches. We've got, eschewing kind of larger scale efficiency, homogenization, all of that it's not even possible to do it at the scale that they're producing at. But we're also talking about harnessing about old traditional methods. We're talking about heritage grains. We're talking about using long lost yeasts. We're talking about all of these kind of things that could potentially be lost were it not for impassioned, driven people that are really, really trying hard to keep it alive, even at tiny scale. So this is Maris Otter. The malt here is Maris Otter. Maris Otter would have been 50 years ago, 60 years ago. There would be 1960s type use Maris Otter, I believe. And this is using a Scandinavian Kveik yeast, Kveik yeast, and it's been matured for 2 months in a Palo Cortado cask. It's just shortbread biscuit, really strong biscuity note. There's a yeastiness here. There's a yeastiness on this is like we're back in the fermentation room again, absolutely. Big fruit, but white fruit, white apples, white melon type notes. But so biscuity, so sweet. It's like shortbread. Buttery shortbread, buttery notes here as well. Density, weight, body. You know that this is going to be something pretty compelling. Let's have a wee go. You know what's incredible about this? A lot of things that I've been sipping tonight, and a lot of things I've experienced with, is that this is 2-month old. It's 2 months maturation in a Palo Cortado cask. But what you've got is such an approachable spirit, such a delicious, tasty thing. A lot of the new makes that you can try from various places, samples here and there and things, the new make can be really quite challenging, really quite. And I know that it's Roddy's, one of Roddy's sayings is that some of the most challenging new make can make some of the most interesting spirits. But this would be just so easy to sip as a whiskey enthusiast, even at this age, and even just 2 months in this cask to give it this really pale gold color. Thick, viscous, it's still there, it's still on the roof of my mouth, it's still in my teeth. This is buttery, melted maple syrup, thick. You don't melt maple syrup, but I think you know what I mean. You're talking sweet, gooey, and that kind of biscuity thing. It's maybe coming from barley. It's a barley malt thing, that kind of shortbread thing I was picking up on. It's almost like a buttery maple syrup, fresh pancake type thing. Fruit. So you just know that we've ended up with 50 distilleries at small scale in Scotland. 50 distilleries, 5 times as many as there were 25 years ago. 15 of those distilleries are tiny. That's the list that we're focused on tonight. And no two spirits taste anything alike. But they do have unifying traits, and that is weight and body and density, heft, things that can be hard to find in a lot of official mass market bottlings today. That's really, really really delicious liquid. Forget about the fact this is syrup. This is spirit. This is not whiskey. This is 2 months old, but everything about it says whiskey. So much sweetness. This is grain sweetness rather than cask sweetness, right? Really, really sweet. A buttery, milky, sweet. Moorish too. Wow. So if you find yourself up visiting Ryan Sutherland at 8 Doors, if you find yourself at Pulteney, Wolfburn, there's another wee distillery there, North Point as well. I don't know if they're open for tours or whatever, but go and have a wee peek, take a photo, see if you can get a glass or something. That is super exciting for the future. But believe it or not, we can get smaller still. We can get smaller. Shall we? Nobody's going to be surprised by this. Despite the fact we're now going to go smaller than 18,000 litres per annum, we're going to end up at a distillery that a lot of us know about. Let's see if you can guess what it is while I say to Jimmy Legg, how would you describe Springbank New Make? I honestly, I don't remember, and I wouldn't like to just say it. I would just be kind of filling in vague memories. Springbank New Make, to me, long row challenging, I think, from memory. Springbank and the Hazelburn, I don't remember, but that suggests that it wasn't so challenging. It's funny, the more new makes that you try, the more that you realize that maybe you don't want to replace all your whiskey shelves with kind of new make, but you realize that a lot of them are quite enjoyable things to sip from a flavour perspective in their own right. Graham Fraser saying most of the heritage malts were for brewing. Many new distilleries are rediscovering them. Absolutely spot on, Graham. A lot of the malts and a lot of the yeasts, in order to ferment that, we're also brewing yeasts as well. Everyone, Chris, good to see you. Ahoy Malt Mates, he's saying I caught some of the early show on the drive home. I don't know how many how tiny distilleries will make it in a global economy with limited shelf space. Aquavitae, true. It's kind of funny how people just kind of come in and kind of take the thoughts out of my head. I think I should just get to it now. Nc'nean is an exception in the lineup tonight. Okay, Nc'nean, if you went into your local specialist retailer, you would probably have a good chance of finding Nc'nean on the shelf. You know, it's been out there for long enough, and they've always made enough of it available. Famously, in COVID years, when they realised their first batch one was going to sell out very quickly, they pulled forward the subsequent batch releases so that they could maintain their presence on the shelf. It was back in a time that a lot of producers out there would seem to celebrate the fact that they didn't have a product to sell, that it was selling out, right? And I always kind of admired Nc'nean for that, and they've maintained that to this day. You can pretty much pick up Nc'nean at any time that you want to, but that is the exception. All of the whiskies that I've sipped with you tonight, and the next whiskey I'm going to sip with you tonight, that's even smaller than North Point, you're not going to find it easily on a shelf. You're not going to walk into your local specialist retailer and be guaranteed to find it there, even if you're in the UK, even if you're in Scotland. The scale of these things is almost like the scale kind of maybe protects them a little bit. They're not potentially in as much debt. Of course, they have to make profit. They're a business, all of these things, but they're kind of protected, and they're selling it locally to the people that visit them, or they have very reduced distribution networks. They don't have the same kind of need for warehousing and big supply chains like a lot of the other distilleries too, because the outturns are very, very, very small. So I wonder, Chris, if they will be protected by their small scale. But you make a good point about shelf space and sheer variety these days. And he's saying, what Graham Fraser doesn't have a picture of a distillery? Oh, the humanity. Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen any pictures from Graham, but I would suggest that there aren't many people that have visited more distilleries than Graham Fraser, and he doesn't count it. If he goes up and takes a picture, that doesn't count. He doesn't count that as a visit. He has to tour it. Martin Logan in Paris is saying, I might need to go to bed now, have fun. Catch up on the replay as always. Bye, everyone, and see you next week. Hopefully, Martin, nice to have you in while you were here, buddy. It'll be interesting to see what you think of the smallest distillery I'm going to go to tonight. Jimmy Legg is saying, you don't remember? A horrible cut of beef cooked on an open fire on a filthy grill. That's Springbank New Make. Meaty. I need to try harder for you, Jimmy. John Ginger Genius is saying, are you going to give us your pick of the evening? I think that's too easy, buddy. It's just too easy, but it's not fair because of all the age of everything that I'm sipping versus something that's 2009 vintage, 15 years old. It's quite obvious if I was to take away the Daftmill out of the lineup. Yeah, I'll maybe try and do that. Graham Fraser is saying lots of new tiny distilleries, Dearness, Kimblend, Ben. Oh my goodness, there's even distilleries here. Ben Cumhale, Cumhale. I've never even heard of that one, Graham. Unbelievable. Moffat and Tolvadi, of course, yes, I have. And you're spot on. It's quite incredible how many there are. In fact, you've got a wee slide here. I think I've got a wee slide here that's going to mention some of those that you mentioned here. Let's bring it up for everyone to see. This is the scale we're speaking about now. We're down at kind of that area where North Point, obviously we're talking about 18,000, 20,000 for Elevation in the centre of Inverness. Moffat, as Graham Fraser mentions, down at 12,000. Likewise, Stirling, that Graham has already mentioned earlier in the chat tonight, at 12,000. And his Dearness, he's mentioning here again as well, as 10,000 litres per annum. Absolutely tiny. But also in that bracket is, of course, been mentioned a few times tonight, and that is this tiny wee converted fire station just over the back behind the Dornoch Castle Hotel that you see in this image on screen right now. Is Dornoch Distillery, Phil and Simon Thompson's project, that's been going now for as long as this channel has been going, actually, for 2017, 2016. They were building this distillery and got it going. And now, obviously, they're well into their fundraising for Struy Distillery. They're upscaling things quite dramatically there. But 12,000 litres, 12,000 litres per annum. Absolutely tiny. So let's talk about this price thing. You've got me griping about the Nc'nean cask strength at £75. You've got me griping about the Strathdean there at £85 at 50% ABV. Well, let me look at the Thompson Brothers. This is a bottle of their single cask. This is actually the one that we picked up. This was gifted to me, to be fair, when we did the live broadcast from their dungeon up there at Dornoch Castle a year ago, almost a year ago to the month, right? I think it was April last year. You can see I've been enjoying this. I've managed to get my hands on one or two other Dornoch malts since then. This was the first one I had ever received. I'd never had one before that. We're talking about 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old at the most single cask releases from Dornoch Distillery. Young whiskey at cask strength, single cask releases so far. They've only done one small batch, which was a very, very recent peated cask release that I featured on the vPub last week, actually. But it's all been single cask so far. Again, that's similar in theme to some of the things I've been talking about tonight, but so dense. I got a nose of really quite interesting, like a creamy white milk chocolate type thing. I've never had creamy chocolate stick in my nose in this before, not from memory, but that's what's coming across tonight. So dense. There's an acidity here on this one too. A lovely kind of, almost kind of like a sweet white wine. Yeah, white grape. Fantastic nose. Fantastic whiskey. One of those things that you could pour this tiny wee pour like this, sit on the sofa, and you wouldn't get up from the sofa for a refill. You would just be happy nosing and taking teeny half sips all night and just absolutely loving it. So this is a 50 cl bottle, tiny little bottle, 100 quid, £100, 50 cl. You know, if you multiply that up, that suggests that a 70 cl is going to be, well, obviously £140 is that's going to be for an extra 20 cl, isn't it? So you realize that this is expensive stuff, and it matters not because it's in such demand that every time that they release it, it's going to sell out. It's sold by ballot. When you're only making 12,000 litres per annum, it is utterly, utterly scarce. And when there's demand for it, much like Daftmill, it's expensive. Demand drives the price, scarcity drives the price, and integrity and flavour and being loved and admired and desired, all of that drives the price. That drives the demand, of course. Terrific, terrific, terrific whiskey. Modern whiskey, ironically modern whiskey, because it's been a long time since anybody's made whiskey in this style, the old-fashioned, old-school style. Super slow fermentations. These guys love to play with the distillation where they're speeding up and slowing down the distillation and things. They love to play with cut points to see how much fruit they can harvest, how hard they can push the cut points and things. Really, really fantastic stuff. And because it's Phil and Simon Thompson, they're only ever going to release the things that they love, the things that they really can show off and be proud of. Without Graham Fraser, where would we be? He lives whiskey. He genuinely does. If we measure our net contribution to whiskey as a legacy, I think it would be difficult to measure Graham Fraser's impact on whiskey. And it's the humility of the man as well and his generosity of time. It is immeasurable. Moffat is 6,000 litres per annum, must be getting close to the smallest. Richard Hall, well, they do have the capability of doing, okay, theoretically, but I think maybe they're only making 6,000 litres maybe just now. There is one that's smaller than that on the go at the moment. Ian Williamson is saying, my bed is calling, so watch the rest on the replay. Good to have you in, Ian. I'm sorry I missed you if I did. Interesting as ever, Roy. I've learned lots of new things. Cheers, everyone. If you're picking us up on the replay now, Ian, welcome back. I hope you enjoy the quiz at the end, buddy. Graham Fraser is saying, Ben Cummill is near Dumfries, soon to start production and pronounced Ben Cool. Okay, so thank you for that, Graham. So it's Ben Cool, which is a cool name in itself. In the borders, eh? Dumfries. Fantastic. Okay, I'm not going to... I've poured a wee bit more of that Dornoch than I wanted to. I think this is going to be my dram for the quiz at the end. It's just beautiful liquid. Let's get small, okay? What is smaller than the Dornocks and the Moffats and those kind of distilleries. There is something that's smaller. Anybody guess what it is? Can anybody guess what's smaller than all of that? Greg's Whisky Guide in Paris, never tried a Thompson yet, but I'm curious too of the future Kythe single malt. If I can get hold of it, for sure might be smaller than many new ones. Absolutely, Kythe is not going to be a particularly big concern. Road to Drum Alberto is saying good night, Roy. Time to head off to bed for me. We'll catch the rest on replay and enjoy the time with your son next week. Alberto, thank you so much. And welcome back now that you're back with us on the replay, buddy. Good to see you. Peter is saying, must be Tiree. The Isle of Tiree, absolutely. The smallest operational news. I mean, look at that. That's basically a nicely presented glazed shed. This is the Isle of Tiree Distillery, way, way, way out there on the very, very remote western edge of the Isle of Tiree. 5,000 litres per annum. So even if we talk about Moffat not being quite as big as their capacity and only producing 6,000, the Isle of Tiree out there in the very, very west is even smaller again. Quite incredible. But of course, we don't have any whiskey to try from Tiree yet. And unfortunately, like the Dalclaggy from North Point or something, I don't have any new make or anything to be able to try either. But I can go smaller. I can go smaller than Dornoch and Moffat. I can go smaller even than Tiree. And it's already been mentioned. Infinity Cask Whiskey with Molly. Fernando saying McAllen, Rose Isle. Jimmy Leggett saying Law, I wouldn't want to keep my lawnmower in that shed. Spot on. Can anybody guess? I can give you a clue. It's a closed distillery. It doesn't exist anymore. But it was smaller than everything by a long way. Smaller than anything we've talked about tonight. I mean, a small still would be, at one point the Wash Act said 1,800 litres had to be the smallest still. We've got smaller stills now, but a small still would have been something in the order of 1,000 litres. That's considered a pretty small still. But this distillery I'm talking about, its stills were 120 litres. They were basically portable stills. They were the type of stills that would have been used by illicit distillers back in the day. Let's see what we've got. Peter is saying a month ago, the Blether of Inverurie Whisky Shop had them on. Interesting. Tiree people you're talking about there, Frank? It might be. Malt Mill, Little Mill, Awe. People saying, Lachlan McKenzie saying Awe, Loch Awe. Close, very, very close, very, very close. I'll show you the distillery here. I'll bring it up. Smallest distillery I'm going to share with you tonight is this one. Loch Ewe. It's difficult to work out how many litres they were capable of making in a year, but it was just so tiny. They were filling typically 5-litre casks. It was almost like a project thing. It was a hobbyist thing, a university thing, a study thing, a distraction. They basically managed to make this legal through a loophole in the original Wash Act of 1786. And it was difficult to find out also what that loophole actually was, but I suspect it was everything to do with the size and the use of the stills involved. But this was attached to a hotel away out there in Wester Ross. And it ran from 2005 until 2015. It was eventually put up for sale and eventually just disappeared. Loch Ewe Distillery is no more. I don't know what it looks like today. I don't know what condition or state it's in today, but this was basically attached to a hotel. And you could turn up at the hotel, you could stay at the hotel, and you could go and make whiskey, not just in the traditional style, but in the traditional farm style, the traditional illicit whiskey making style, on such a scale that you would only be making it for your own personal use. Like I say, they were filling 5-litre casks. And they never really sold much in the way of whiskey. I mean, there's records of an 8-year-old out there. But generally speaking, the majority of it was sold as Loch Ewe Spirit. the word tiny, it doesn't hack it. They were genuinely a modern example of what a micro distillery is. Absolutely tiny. Let me show you a bottle of Loch Ewe. There's no ABV on this. It doesn't even tell me how many CL is in the bottle. It doesn't have a description of how it's presented or what it is. This is just spirit of Loch Ewe. I've opened this because I had to make sure that that cork was okay. Had to use a wine corkscrew to get into it. So I have only cracked this open and had a wee nose of it to make sure that it was spirit that was in this. So this is not a bottle of whiskey. If this had been left in cask for long enough, it would have become whiskey, because all of the other things they were doing was legitimate about whiskey. I hope I can open this now. Maybe not. I maybe need to. Oh no, it's going to open. Quite a muted wee pop there. Let's try again. Oh, that's better. My goodness, that was a lot better. So I've had a wee nose of this. And it definitely smells of spirit. But a shout out to another Glasgow Whisky Club member. This was John Darling, who brought this along for me and gifted to me this one night and said, Roy, I think maybe you'll find a use for this at some point in the future. And I looked at it and I wondered, whatever use could I find to talk about the spirit of Loch Ewe? And I think I've found it tonight. But Alt B Westeros is where it was located, distilled on the northwest coast of Scotland using 18th century methods. Ancient style of a whiskey. It's put in a ceramic bottle as well. Adrian H is saying, get into it. It's quite, I have to say I'm a wee bit apprehensive because there's not a lot of reassurance of, quality control. What's this made? This is the closest thing to illicit whiskey that I think I'll ever sip on the vPub, right? It's the closest thing to just kind of random maverick spirit. I don't even know what color it's going to be, but let's do it in front of you guys. It definitely has a whiskey-esque smell, so that's encouraging. It smells like spirit. Let's go. What color are we going to get? Oh, very clear. Oh no, there is gold. There's color here. Okay, that's also encouraging. So it's likely that this spirit of Loch Ewe only spent mere weeks in cask, but you can see there's a pale gold. In fact, very, very similar to the 2-month-old Dalclaggy spirit sample that I had. Let's get it to coat the glass. I've no idea what to expect on the nose on this one. Okay. It smells of whiskey spirit. It smells of malt spirit. There's actually quite a lot of complexity here, so let me try and parse this out and tease this out a wee bit. There's a salty, briny thing here that I would suggest is strong enough to suggest a wee bit of a. It shouldn't be the leading note. It shouldn't be the first thing I say, but I'm going to say it. It's a wee bit like tinned fish. It's not off-putting. It's not strong. It's not pungent. But it's a wee bit like a sardines or something like that. Salty tinned fish. It's definitely coastal. It's definitely salty. Brine. It's not a lot of fruit, but if I'm going to go and try and find a fruit here, we've got green apple skin and unripe banana, green banana. And malt, in the sense like you've taken a handful of malt and you've literally got a handful of grain in your hand, but damp malt floor. If you've ever been at Springbank or wherever where they've got malt floor and you've scooped it up, you've stuck your face in it, maybe taken a little nibble at it like I have. So that green, fusty, damp malt. Fusty's not the right word. Mulchy, damp. A wee bit of, like I say, like a like an echo of like a salty fish type note, but not fishy, not fermented fish, not off, not a bad thing, just almost like a wee savoury note. Okay, I noticed somebody asking if I'm going to go blind sipping this tonight. Klitz saying, will we be witnessing you going blind tonight? Hopefully the health insurance is up to date, says Adrian. Gene Kelly certainly doesn't smell like Teen Spirit. No. Inverurie Whiskey Shop is saying, I bet the colour is E150. I don't think they would have added any of that. I wish Roddy was there. You can make him try it first. Actually, I just wish Roddy was there. We need to get Roddy back, don't we, Jimmy? Daniel Key is in. Good to see you. Is the spirit even distilled in a way that's safe for consumption? Yeah, I believe they were selling it commercially. I'm still frustrated over losing 750ml bottles. Now we have 10 CL. Jimmy Like is saying, I've eaten grain off the Springbank malt floor. Don't tell anyone. I think we've all done it. That's okay. Okay, I'm going in. Cheers, everyone. I shouldn't be nervous, but I'm a wee bit apprehensive about this. Cheers. Oh. It's hot. Oh my goodness. What have I just done? So the I can't believe I'm going to have to go in again. There's a wee bit of a kind of a light kind of white wine vinegar thing, a wee bit of acidity. There is that tinned fish thing is definitely there. The fruit is sharp, tart, and sour. There's a sourness to this. The salty, briny theme continues, but that sense of kind of really wet cereal is prevalent. Wet, damp malt. Let's go. Let's have another wee sip. Actually, my reaction probably came across as being negative. It's not as negative as I expected, but it's very, very strong ABV that I don't think this has been diluted or reduced whatsoever. I think we're in the high 60s, I would suggest. Trying to work out what that is on the arrival. It's like nothing. It's not unpleasant. There's actually a nice sweetness there too. I'm feeling a wee bit bad for how I reacted, but it wasn't about the flavour. It was just about the sheer potency, the power of it. There's actually a bit of sweetness there. It doesn't taste like there's anything dangerous here. It is a wee bit challenging, there's no doubt. The acidity, the coastalness, the weird, odd fishiness. But it's not fishy. That's not fair. It's you know what it's like? It's like if you've had tinned fish in oil, it's like the oiliness and so it's less fish and more of that briny oil. That's closer. That's fairer to it. But the finish is still the fish thing is there. It's absolutely there. It's got a long finish, ridiculously long finish, as a lot of new make spirits actually do have quite a long finish. I'm actually really, really happy to have this. Not just because it's content for me, but it's become part of history. Ironically, kind of modern history. They're trying to they came back in the 21st century to try and remake whiskey the way it was made in the 17th century. These tiny little portable stills, maybe even distilled, condensed through a worm. Handmade, everything would have been handmade, really small scale, in tens of litres rather than, hundreds of litres. The maximum capacity of the stills were 120 litres, and they were distilling down and only filling 5-litre casks at a time. Microscopic scale. And actually quite a Moorish side to this. It's like kind of interesting spirits, interesting whiskies. What it does is it makes us want to go back and say, what is that? What is that I'm tasting? Spirit of Loch Ewe. John Darling, thank you for gifting me this. Hopefully I've still got my sight when I wake up tomorrow morning. Sounds like Ralphie would love it. I absolutely don't doubt for a second that Ralphie would love to try this. If he hasn't already, we wouldn't be surprised if he already has tried it, right? Ginger Genius is saying the best reaction today. Just Jimmy Jazz is saying that was regret on the arrival. Aquaviti, I'm not sure, Jimmy. Good to have you in. Lights are still on, Aquaviti. I can still see, absolutely. Greg's Whisky Guide is saying, Aquaviti, admit it. Someone gave you the 18th century stinking fish tank vessel resting. New make from Campbelltown when its reputation was awful. Jimmy Like has bought me a dram to say, I really like how you look when you're afraid. Was it obvious? Was it? I was genuinely a wee bit apprehensive, especially because I'm doing it live. Peter is saying, does anyone note the difference in him talking after that sip? At least somewhat faster than before. Jean Kelly is saying the TripAdvisor reviews for this distillery may offer some insight into why it's no longer open. Oh, wow. Jean, that's an interesting one. I never thought of even looking there. And Voodoo Whiskey Shop has said, I am detecting a slight slur. You might be right, Mike. You might be right. I think we better get the quiz at the end on the go before I just fall over lights out. I've got my Dornock here to get me through, and I will, believe it or not, be very happy to get my way through and sip the rest of this Loch Ewe. Everything I've sipped tonight is on a kind of intense craft, dense, full, distinctive theme. They're all completely different, but they all have a similar kind of unctuous, thick, heavy style. Super flavoursome. It's easy. It's wonderful when you sip whiskey that makes it easy for you to express tasting notes or what you're getting when the flavours and the streams of flavour, aroma, colour, whatever it may be, make themselves obvious. It's fun to do. And there was one tonight that it all happened so fast, so quickly. I think it was the Nc'nean Castren. It was like, oh, okay, this is exciting. And I know exactly what I'm going to say. I'm not going to be looking into the camera going, how can I talk about this? And all of these have made it very, very easy to taste tonight. Your mileage may vary, the way that you taste and enjoy whiskey. All of us is slightly different, of course, and that should be embraced. But it's been easy to express these things tonight. I'm quite encouraged, happy, excited by the sheer variety that we have in Scotch whisky, aren't we all? But even at this tiny microscopic nano distillery scale, we've got these kind of, we know that the shelves are going to creak with variety. There's going to be so much choice, so many new different brands to try and get our head around. Maybe we're going to expand our collections at home. Maybe we're just going to be a lot more selective at home. Maybe we're going to spend a bit more and get a bit more and keep a bit less. But we have to remember the scale that these are being produced at. We are, and I don't use the word lightly, we are in a position of privilege. It might not endure. It might not last. All of these brands might not exist in the future. We hope that their scale can protect them and help them. We hope that the tourist trade, we hope that the locality, that what they can sell very, very locally will help sustain them. We know that they're not going to get involved in complex and far-reaching supply chains to get their product right across the globe. It's slightly more unlikely. But what it does mean is that if they do sustain, if they do remain part of the Scotch whisky colour palette and tapestry that we have out there, the definition of flavour and the variety is taking care of itself. Yes, it's deliberate. but it's not designed. We know that we're going to get something different from all these small distilleries, but so much of it feels like it's taking care of itself. Yes, Phil and Simon Thompson are going to get old school style whiskey, but just what style of old school style whiskey they're going to end up with has got so much to do with where they are, the shape of everything, the measure of everything, the length of these things, the size of the other. What it does for us as whiskey enthusiasts is just fortify this endless, wonderful thing that we have of whiskey flavour variety. I've only tried 6 or 7 distilleries from the tiniest distilleries in Scotland tonight. 7 if you include this Loch Hugh at the end. It's closed now. And no two things tasted even vaguely similar. It was stunning. A. Martin's is saying, I've heard that the ceramic bottle can have an influence on the spirit. It could be. I don't know if that's porous or fully glazed or whatever. It could be a little bit. I suspect that the flavours I'm detecting tonight is from the spirit, I think. There's no details on that. I don't know when that was bottled. I don't know what ABV it is. I don't know how much John Darling paid for it. I don't know anything. I'll maybe need to pick his brains the next time I see him. What are the chances that you turn into a superhero aquavite? Oh, I would take that, right? That would become an elixir. That would become a very valuable product indeed. I could do with being a superhero, Jimmy. How about you? Donald Drama's saying, this one might burn twice on the way out. I hope not. I hope not. Definitely will not last, says Jimmy Legg. And Martin Jones is saying, I'm going to look out for some Strathdean. I think, Martin, that would be a good place to start. But with Strathdean, you've got a really well-made, good balanced product. Nice bit of spice, lots of sweet fruit. It's a genuinely good whiskey. 50% ABV is a perfect ABV to bottle that as well. Bruce Bernard is insane. Duffman, that's right. 4 out of 5 barflies. Can't be wrong. We'll leave the lewd artwork out and not comment too much on that. Fantastic. All right, everyone. Thank you for bearing with me tonight. Thank you for hanging out to talk about Scotland's tiniest distilleries. As I say, before we go into the quiz at the end, please stay for the quiz at the end. Hopefully it's a good one tonight. The Graham Frasers of the world, the Whiskey with Molly Benns, the Helen Widdowsons, these type of people, they might have a good chance of getting a wee 10 out of 10 if they're still here playing along. I hope that I've got the balance right tonight, easy through to tricky to difficult to ass-hattery at the end. But it's always just meant as a bit of fun. Play along, have a bit of fun with it. Let's see, Inverurie Whiskey Shop, you star. Thank you so much, Mike. He's gifted 5 Aquavite memberships. An absolute pleasure to meet you in the flesh, you and Kat as well. I got to meet both of you there at the Independent Spirits Festival a couple of weeks ago. What a brilliant gig it was too. And thanks for your generosity looking after the barflies. Okay, the quiz at the end is always multiple choice. We suggest that the pass mark is 5 out of 10. There might be a couple of tricky ones in here tonight, but it should start quite gentle and pick up a wee bit later. Good luck, everyone. Thank you for hanging out with me tonight. Remember, I'm not here next week. I'm taking a wee break. It's Easter. It's the school holidays. While my girls are going to be studying and my wife's going to be looking after them, I'm going to smuggle my son away and get up to some mischief with him next week. I hope you'll forgive me not hanging out with you next week. It's the first Thursday I'll have missed in 2025. Well, since we started back up again, at least. Good luck, everyone, for the quiz at the end. Here we go. There is not a tiny distillery, micro distillery theme here tonight. It's a very general quiz at the end tonight. I hope you enjoy it, and it's nice to hang out with you to the end. Question 1. Which of the following distilleries features in the micro distilleries section of the 2025 Malt Whisky Yearbook? So I would like you to see these 3 distilleries and tell me which one exists under the micro distilleries section of the latest Malt Whisky Yearbook. I hope you all have a copy. It is vital, very, very useful for you to perform well at the quiz at the end. Question 1, Avonjarrick. Sorry, A, Avonjarrick. B, Orkney. C, Dornoch. Which of the following distilleries features in the micro distillery section of the 2025 Malt Whisky Yearbook? George McLeod is in. Good to see you, George. He's a barfly and he's suggesting that it's B. Kel Taylor thinks it's C, and Dave the Brave thinks it's C. P-Head thinks it's B, and Daniel Key thinks it's C. Discordia, good to see you back again, Discordia. Nice to have you in. A. Richie Z. Is that the original Richie Z? Could that be you? Richie, it would be so amazing to see you. If it is Richie Z, you've been around since 2017, my friend. I hope you're keeping well. Mike Molasses is saying B. Nicholas is saying C, and Michael C is saying C. We're looking for something that's in the micro distillery section of the Malt Whisky Yearbook. Greg's Whisky Guide is saying following Mark. Maybe that's Mark Watt you're following there, is it? Saying A and C. I don't know if Mark Watt is still in. Is it? Which Mark are you following? A and B, says Martin Jones. Love you, Roy. Home from work. It is Richie C. Richie, how are you keeping? It's so good to see you in, fella. You know, it's funny how you just remember folk. You were around it from the very beginning, buddy. It's brilliant to have you in. Daisy is here. She's saying hi, Roy. And where's Roy? She's talking to the other Roy in Norway. Good to see you, Daisy. A and C and probably B too, says Graham Fraser. Now, how you read the questions and how you look at what's in front of you helps you at the quiz at the end. There's a banana skin on this one, which suggests that it's not a freebie. You're not going to get 3 out of 3 tonight. One of them is there. It's a banana skin. For reasons that Ingvar does explain to some extent in the Malt Whisky Yearbook 2025, Averick exists in the micro distillery section. Orkney exists in the micro distillery section. Dornoch, despite being only 12,000 litres per annum, is in the new distilleries section. So it's only A and B. Dornoch is not a micro distillery under the way and the organisation of the Malt Whisky Yearbook. Bizarrely, 12,000 litres. Averick and Orkney are. So if you said A, you get a point. If you said B, you get a point. If you said A and B, you get a point. And if you said A and C or B and C, you still, I would suggest, get a point. If you said C and only C, I think your bum's out the windy. Banana skin, always look out for the banana skins. Question 2, which of these lowland distilleries produces malt known as Dalrymple? This is a trade name for a malt. You can sometimes pick up independent bottlings of Dalrymple. Where is it from? Dalrymple is from A, Loch Lomond, B, Ailsa Bay, or C, Bladnoch. Pete Ed is saying only B, just checked. So I have to do the same thing now, don't I? Averick is there. And Orkney is there. Averick, remember it's on 2 pages, Frank. Averick and Orkney, but Dornoch is in the new distillery section, buddy. Greg is saying that's hard to remember, so following the crowd, he's going for B. Waiting for Mark Watt on this one. That's okay, Roy. If you're going to follow the crowd, you can absolutely do that, and you can admit to doing it as well. There's no judgment here. If it's all about learning, then we have to be able to do that. Barry Coleman is agreeing with you with a B, and Joe Smith is saying B as well. George McLeod saying B. Fantastic. Ginger Genius, Whisky with Molly, Graham Fraser, Bruce Bernard. Seems to be very, very popular. That everybody seems to think that Dalrymple is from Ailsa Bay, and absolutely, you're all spot on. Part of the Grants complex down in Girvan. Single malt distillery, Ailsa Bay. Some of the trade stuff that they put out there is absolutely Dalrymple from Ailsa Bay. Question 3. There are 11 Scotch malt distilleries that begin with the letter T. How many of them are located on an island? We're looking for T distilleries located on a Scottish island. Scotch malt distilleries located on islands. A. There's only one of them. B, actually, there's 3 of them. Or C, there are 5, including micro distilleries, that are yet to release. Out of the 11 Scotch malt distilleries that begin with the letter T, how many are on an island? 1, 3, or 5? Brian Cabayas is suggesting that we have an asshat already. I just need to calm down. settle the thing, calm the jets, think a little bit. Calm down to a frenzy. I am not fond of this question, says Jimmy Leg Akaviti. Mark Watt is suggesting B. A. Martins is saying is enjoying a 2 out of 2 so far. Richie Z is on a 2 out of 2, along with Discordia, Where's Roy, Daisy Vleeland, Big Ed, Gene Kelly, Bruce Bernard. Lots of people having 2 out of 2. It's good stuff so far. I'm sure it's not A, says Fernando. Maybe C. What a Life in Independent Spirits is in. I hope that's Greg Schwartz. How are you keeping, big guy? How are you doing? You missed a nice day out yesterday with David Guy and Keith Duncan. We had a nice time. Perhaps Guy and I had too good a time, but it was good fun. It was much needed. C includes B. That's true. That's kind of true, but you know where we're going. George McLeod is saying Torrevec. Brian Cabayas is saying Talisker, Tobermory, Torrevec. What else? Absolutely, Brian. You're spot on. No more. You've got the 3 of them nailed. Torrevec and Talisker on the Isle of Skye and Tobermory on the Isle of Mull. 3 of the tea distilleries exist on islands. Well done, everyone. Dave the Brave suggesting, along with Roy Ovimere, that it was C. Might have slipped up there, guys. It's nice to have you both in all the same. Petehead is saying Tyree. Well, I know Tyree, but it's a bit like Rassay. It's Isle of Tyree and Isle of Rassay. So, like I say, you could call that as I've got it wrong, but the way it's listed is actually Isle of Tyree and Isle of Rassay. Just let me do a double check. Not for the first time tonight. There we go. Isle of Tyree. And Rassay is not an R, it's Isle of Rassay. But it's up to you. If you wanted to cry foul and take a point on that one, you can. Question 4. The Thompson Brothers have just released an innovative new product for launch in the weeks ahead. What is different about it? Okay, we talked a wee bit about this tonight. Wasn't intended to, but we have. They've just released an innovative new product. What is different about it? A, it could be the best value of the year. B, no one will know what they're buying. Or C, it may be unflippable. What is unique, or what is different, what is interesting, what is quite curious about the new innovative product from the Thompson Brothers? A, it could be the best value of the year. B, no one will know what they're buying. Or C, it may be unflippable. Sugar Kitty is in. Good to see Sugar Kitty. It may be a mystery to me, says Sugar Kitty. Hell's Wood is in, and she's suggesting that it's A, and it's B, and it's C, and Adrian is saying all 3. Lachlan is saying B. Daniel Key is saying B. Lots and lots of people saying B. George McLeod, Ginger Genius, Joe Smith, A. Martins, Lachlan McKenzie, Gabriel Welding, Paul Gibbs, Discordia, Frank Peathead, One Glassman Warner. Good to see Warner. Good to see Paul Gibbs. How are you keeping well? Vasile. Everybody's saying B. Whiskey with Molly saying A and B, and George McLeod is saying it's a mystery. No idea, so we'll follow the crowd, says Greg in Paris, going with B. I can tell you that there may be a bit of opinion here and not just pure fact, but let's think about this. It's £65 a bottle. You don't know what it is until you buy it. So B is absolutely right. We don't know what they'll be buying in terms of, we know it's single malt at 48.5% ABV, but we don't know what distillery it's going to be from until we open the bottle. Amazing, right? So if you open it and it's a 28-year-old, 29-year-old, something like that, at 65 quid, it could be the best value of the year. So it's also A. And if you can only auction sealed bottles, who's going to spend more than the retail price on a gamble? It may actually be unflippable. It might be, in my opinion. A, B, and C, all correct. If you answered any of them, if you answered all of it, or 2, give yourself a point. It's going to start to get a bit tougher. Certainly after the picture question, Brian Cabayas, Discordia, Adrian H. Gene Kelly, all enjoying 4 out of 4. Sorry, Adrian and Gene Kelly are actually on 3. They have managed to catch you out. Nicholas have caught out as well. Big Ed is on a 4 out of 4 though. David Brave on a 4, along with Daisy Vleeland in the Netherlands. Bruce Bernard as well on a 4. Fantastic. Let's go into That's a wee picture, sorry, I just included that. The N65 £. This is their mystery malt. Interestingly, I noticed if you zoom in on this image, it actually talks about batch 2 already. So they're very, very mature with this project. They've got the second batch ready as well. And there it is. So we've got the oldest at the top there, a Speyside at 29 years old, an Nc'nean at 27 years old. I bet that's a cracker. Ardmore, 26 years old, Ardmore, 25-year-old, Nc'nean, 17-year-old, Altmore, 15-year-old, Kalila, 14-year-old. If you get any of these for 65 £, you'd be very happy. But all the way down, Brookladdy, the Rins at 13, a 13-year-old Orkney, Cognac cask at 13, Bunnahabhain, 11-year-old, Clynelish, 9-year-old, Ardnamurchan, 7, even an Ardnamurchan 7-year-old, incredible. Glenwivis, 6-year-old, Dornoch, 5-year-old, there's Dornoch in the mix as well. Nc'nean, 5-year-old, Lochlee, 4-year-old. Listen, any of those selected by the Thompson brothers, surely nobody we can be complaining at 65 £. I think it's just a brilliant concept. Good luck with everything. This is the legitimate picture question at the end. We're looking at the inside of a distillery. We're looking at a still house. But I want you to tell me, are we looking at A, the furthest north Scotch malt distillery, B, the furthest east Scotch malt distillery, or C, the furthest west Scotch malt distillery? So yeah, you have to pretty much have a decent idea. The shiny new steel vats, the tanks on the side, could be fermentation tanks. I think they probably are washbacks, steel washbacks. I have to look at this, the new build of it. Obviously, it's a new distillery, probably quite a small thing. It's the most furthest north in Scotland, the most furthest east, or the furthest west? What are we looking at? Jimmy Legacy in Springbank. Brilliant. Donald Rance is in here. Donald, is this like a visit from all the folk from way back? Donald, it's so good to see you, and it's such nice to welcome a familiar name back again. It's been a wee while, buddy. I hope you're keeping well. I hope you're still enjoying your drams. So the Donald Rance, all the kind of, it's amazing to have these names like Richie Z, and so many of you that have been around constantly from way back in the beginning. Fernando's saying those still look pretty good, not too big, not too tall. Everyone is going with the flow, suggesting that we're now looking at the furthest north. And Whisky with Molly isn't even going as far to say Lerwick, which would be in Shetland, which would be the furthest north. Ben, you're absolutely spot on. But if anybody did chance their arm and suggest that we're also looking at the furthest east, that would also be true. So if you answered A or B, give yourself a point. We are looking at the still house inside. I think this is maybe an artist's rendering. I don't know if it's an actual photograph of the Lerwick still house up in Shetland. So it's nice to see Shetland actually finally having a distillery, a legitimate Scotch whisky producing distillery, well underway. Question 6, which of the following is a Dave Broom book looking at Japanese whisky? I'm going to give you 3 books, but I want you to spot the Dave Broom book covering Japanese whisky. A Sense of Place. B, The Way of Whisky. C, Whisky Rising. Trying to find a Dave Broom book about Japanese whisky as I sip my wee Dornoch single cask. Brian is saying 5 out of 5 on my return to quiz at the end. Something to celebrate. You've got a pass mark already, buddy. Well done. Lots and lots of people going with B on this one. B for banana skin. Graham Fraser saying I better get this right. B. Graham Fraser being obviously not just a journeyman and a super knowledgeable whisky human, but a big whisky book collector as well. Vasile is also saying B, as well as the rest of the crowd. B for barfly. Very few people. Agino Kamo is saying B, but I like C. Though I wish it was C, says Martin Jones. Yeah, of course, the land of the rising sun, Whisky Rising, right? It's very tempting to put that in there. I can tell you that Whisky Rising is actually a legitimate whisky book on Japanese whisky, but it is not written by Dave Broom. Sense of Place is a general whisky book by Dave Broom. The Way of Whisky is actually the name. And there's two books out, there's two versions out there. One is called The Way of Whisky, and another one is called The Japanese Way of Whisky. So it went through maybe some kind of renaming or something. George MacLeod, 6 out of 6, fantastic, along with James Grainer Malt in Sweden, Gino Como in Canada celebrating a pass mark on 5, and Petehead is on his 6, as well as quite a few others like Daisy, Big Ed. Fantastic, well done. Let's go on to question 7. Which of these distilleries historically closed to the public will open for this year's Spirit of Speyside Festival? Which of these distilleries historically close to the public will open for this year's Spirit of Speyside Festival? A. Dallas Dew, B. Glenglassaugh, or C. Inchgour? Graham Fraser is obviously on his 6 out of 6. Well done, big guy. Martin Jones on a 5. Joe Smith also on a 5. Jeffrey Bangers is in. Good to see you, Jeffrey. Celebrating a 4. Richie Z said a wee slip up. He's on a 5, but he's got his pass mark. Greg in Paris also got a pass mark on 5 out of 6. Oh, this is splitting the crowd a wee bit. Which of these distilleries, historically closed to the public, will open for this year's Spirit of Speyside Festival? Should maybe have a banana skin here. I didn't think it warranted it. Come on, pass mark, says Jeffrey Bangers. Okay, Graham Fraser has now answered. He'll wait till the end. Let's see how many people suddenly change their mind. I can tell you that Dallas Dew, historically close to the public. No, Dallas Dew has been open to the public for forever. It's been a working, well, it's not been a working, it's been a museum, a distillery museum. So anybody could go and visit Dallas Dew for a long time. Glenglassaugh is not in Speyside. Glenglassaugh is a Highland distillery. It has to be Inchgour by process of elimination. Graham Fraser did get it right because he is going to visit it. So it's C. So lots of people doing a 180 at the last after. That's really interesting to see. Great stuff. Great fun. Well done, everyone. Brian Cabayas, Grainer Malt, still holding their 7 out of 7 together. I think Graham Fraser is also on his 7 out of 7. Jeffrey Bangers saying, no, you still need to hang on. Still a few more opportunities for you to get your pass mark. Stick with it, Jeffrey. Question 8. Glenmorangie, A Tale of Tokyo, used what type of casks in its maturation? What kind of casks did Tale of Tokyo employ? A. Mizunara, bourbon and sherry. B. Mizunara and bourbon only. Or C. Mizunara only. Oak, says Mark Watt. Spot on, big guy. Spot on. European oak, American oak, Japanese Mizunara oak. What are we talking about here? All 3? Just 2? Just 1? I used to live at Inchgour Distillery, says Mark Watt. That's right. I like your stories. If you've ever been to a Mark Watt tasting and some of the stories that he shares of his garden in Speyside and the collapsing, I don't want to, demolishing of distilleries and things, I don't want to take it. Your stories are good. They don't need to be shared on the vPub. A bit late for the party, but passing by to say hi to the Barflies and Aquaviti. Pedro from Brazil, it's really nice to have you in at the end. Buddy, I hope you pick it up on replay, big guy. It's nice to have you hanging out with us. I just ordered a bottle, says Discordia. Richard G saying, do you have a favourite Glenmorangie expression? Yeah, I have to say I'm a wee bit of a fan. I've always been a fan of the 10-year-old original. I really think it's probably the most consistent product in Scotch whisky, bar none. And I do have a wee soft spot for Signet. I don't own a bottle. I've never owned a bottle, truth be told. I had a bottle here in the vPub for a while, but it was owned by the Whisky Rev. But it's a braw, rich thing. Okay, spot on, as so many of you. It says on the bottle, had to dig it out, says Kyle Taylor, but he's saying A for Mizunara, bourbon and sherry, which is absolutely the right combination. The other two, obviously, because I'm saying only there, it had to be only A. If you said A, got it absolutely spot on as we go into the penultimate, second from last. Sir Robert Bruce Lockhart said, 1/3 genius, 1/3 megalomaniac, and 1/3 eccentric. About which famous whiskey character from the past? When Robert Bruce Lockhart said that, who was he talking about? Who was the 1/3 genius, 1/3 megalomaniac, and 1/3 eccentric? Was it A, Restless Peter Mackie, B, Father of Irish Whiskey from Scotland, John Jameson, or C, the famous Leith purveyor and whiskey guy, blender, John Krabbe? Who was 1/3 genius, 1/3 megalomaniac, and 1/3 eccentric? Mark Watt is spot on, saying Billy Abbott. Megalomania, I don't associate that. Eccentric, genius, megalomania, maybe, I don't know. Maybe you know him better than I do. Whiskey Energy is insane. A, Restless Peter Mackie. Whiskey Energy, you're a barfly, but I think that might be the first time I've welcomed you in. It's nice to have you. Martin Jones is going with A, along with Bruce, George McLeod, Paul Gibbs, Dave the Brave, Big Ed, Mark Watt, Richie Z, Sugar Kitty, Michael C. Good to see you, Michael. What, that's not Roy? Okay, I can tell you that you're very knowledgeable folk. Well done, everyone. We're talking about the really interesting character that is the restless Peter Mackie of Craigellachie, of Teachers, White Horse rather, Lagavulin fame, restless Peter Mackie. We go into that at the end. Brian Cabayas, amongst others. Grain of Malt. Oh, James in Sweden is on a 9. Who else is on a 9 so far? There's a lot of high scores. Bruce is holding it together with a 9. Graham Fraser, of course, on a 9. Rick Johnson on a 9. Daisy in the Netherlands on a 9. Navigating their way through brilliantly well. So there's going to be a very good chance of some 10 out of 10s tonight, just the way that we like it. Of course, we're going to finish on an asshat. It's deliberately awkward. We're going to need to know the answer to 2 different things to get it right. Good luck, everyone. I'll tell you the asshat at the end is a question about how many Diageo special releases, 12-year-old, the cast strength special release, have been released to date? This is an annual release from Diageo, the 12-year-old special releases, cast strength. How many have been released to date? About the same as A, Scottish Islands with whiskey distilleries located on them. B, years of age stated on an official bottling of Craigellachie. Or C, Scotch malt distilleries located south of Pitlochry. This is awful. Asshat questions tend to be awful. But I'm trying to work out with you, process of elimination probably required, how many Diageo special releases of the cast strength variety have been released to date. Does it equate to the same as the number of Scottish islands with whiskey distilleries located on them? Does it equate to the same as the number of years on an official Craigellachie? Or does it equate to the same as Scotch malt distilleries located south of Pitlochry? Pete Edison thought we were talking tiny distilleries tonight, Roy. True asshat this. I do apologise, but don't apologise, Frank. There's a few of you in the running for a 10 out of 10 tonight, and it has to be something that's knowledgeable. It's got to be earned. It's got to be something that you can genuinely claim. Maybe you've managed to get a 9 out of 9 just by having fun and following the crowd, which is great too. So the asshat, you need a wee bit of luck involved as well. One Glassman is saying C, please. Jeffrey Byers is saying, I'm going with B only because Craigellachie is in the answer. We all love a Craigellachie, don't we? I'm going with B because it mentions Craigellachie, says Mike Molasses as well. Mike, it's always great to have you here, buddy. Going with B, I have a rough idea in mind, says a grain of malt. Good stuff. Bruce Bernard saying B. Michael C is going with A. We're all over the place. We've got A's, we've got B's, and we've got C's getting answered for this one. Daniel Key is going for B. A cause least choosing, says George McLeod. And Jeffrey Bangers, like mines. Okay. Okay, I can tell you that the first, well, I'm not going to tell you actually. I'll tell you the answers to the options first. Scottish Islands with Whisky Distilleries, number 11. Years of age stated on an official bottling of Craigellachie. I'm going for 23 on that one. Could also be 19, 17, and 13, and 31, and various other ages. But it's 23. Scotch Malt Distilleries south of Pitlochry is 30, located south of Pitlochry. But I can tell you that since 2002, when the first 12-year-old Diageo Special was released, here we are, 23 years later, with 23, the 24th will be released in 2025, of Lagavulin 12 released. If you said B, you're correct. An annual release for the last 23 years. 10 out of 10 for Graham Fraser. Bruce Bernard celebrating a 10 out of 10 as well. Brian Cabayas celebrating a 10 out of 10. Absolutely amazing. So we've got at least 3 10 out of 10s. Wow, didn't realise there were that many. That's what struck me, Ben. That's why I've included this in the ASAT at the end tonight. Can't believe how many different releases there's been of Lagavulin's 12-year-old. They've never missed a year of release for that 12-year-old. I think it's probably the most consistent special release from Diageo. Gino Camo saying congrats to the 10s. Did I miss any other 10s? Did anybody else manage to get one apart from Daisy Vleeland as well? She got a 10 out of 10 too, so that's 4 10 out of 10s tonight. I think that's a nice number. If there's 5, if 6, if there's more out there, then even better. Brilliant stuff. Aquaviti 10 and my love to Craigellachie. A dram from Whisky with Molly right at the end, right at the dying embers. He's saying love to the family, especially the boy, and thanks, Roy. Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you. I'm going to be looking after him over the next few days. I can't wait to take a wee trip away with him. But Ben, thank you very much for your generous dram right at the end. Thanks to everyone for your support tonight, Barflies, and all your drams that you bought me. Cheers to you all. Grainham Malt is celebrating being a member for 60 months. And he's celebrating his 10 out of 10 with the 10 emojis tonight as well. Brilliant. Helen's saying, fab and somewhat geeky vPub. Enjoy your wee break with the boy. Is it not always a wee bit geeky in here? I think that's okay, Helen, isn't it? Kyle Taylor is saying, I hope to have a great trip with your son. Thank you very much, Kyle. I'm looking forward to it. I hope he is too. I think Dad's a wee bit boring these days. Lachlan McKenzie saying the boy. Absolutely. Kyle Taylor is. Sorry, I picked that one up. And Gino is celebrating being also a member for 60 months, saying you have great times with the family, buddy. Thank you so much, Gino. Sherry Kitty saying congratulate Donald Rance on his promotion. Hey, Donald, you got a promotion? Well, I'll not only congratulate you, but I'll raise a wee glass. I hope it ends up being a super positive thing for you, Donald. Wonderful to have you in as well. Cheers. Fun vPub Aquavite, says Mike Molasses. Enjoy your week off. Thank you, buddy. Gene Kelly saying had a great time. Enjoy your time away with your son. Thank you, Gene. Peter is saying all that. I'm calling it a day with a hit the sack. Thanks for organising Aquavite. See you on the 17th. Enjoy next week with the boy, and all of you see you next time. Slancheva. Thank you, Frank. Klaus Falsgraf in Germany saying finally a 10. I can be happy about. Falsgraf, well done on a 10 out of 10. Brilliant stuff. Well done to you. Thanks for a good vPub and have a good time next week. Thank you. Adrian is saying, cheers, Roy. That was a great laugh. Have a super break and see you next time. Thank you very much, Adrian. And Brian Cabayas is saying, thank you. I enjoyed this session with a cup of flat white cheers. It might be the way to do it, Brian. Well done to you. Bruce Bernard is saying, Slanchivan, enjoy your break. And Graham Fraser saying, thanks, Roy. Enjoy the break. I'm going to raise this wee glass of Dornock's beautiful single cask. I never told anybody which single cask it was, but you can tell by the label. They're all unique labels. This is actually a bottle 56 out of 139, cast number 130. Cheers to you all. I love talking about big distilleries and wee distilleries and everything in between. I love talking about whiskey with you guys in general. I'll continue to do it for as long as you allow me. I absolutely adore it. I think it's a privilege. I think I'm afforded so much privilege through whiskey, not least hanging out with you guys every Thursday night. Martin Jones has gifted 5 Aquavite memberships right at the end. Thank you very much for your generosity. Martin and Micah and Veruri saying great to join in, catch up later on the proper chat, 8 out of 10 on the quiz. Michael C is saying thanks for your courage and trying the Loch U, yep. And Fernando's saying, fantastic. Good night. Love to talk to you all, Barflies. Thanks, Roy Aquavites. Enjoy your free next week. Good night, everyone. Fernando, thank you so much. Raise this glass to you all like I always do. I look forward to seeing you back here on the 17th. And until then, I'll remind you all that you're very dearly loved. Have a great time. Have a great Easter, everyone. Cheers to you all.